Before
Welcome to the IP Office Administration course. The aim of this course is to offer the necessary information and tools to manage day-to-day moves and changes to your in-house system or systems. The course will look at both IP Office 500 version 2 and IP Office Server Edition. All systems in the course are running on IP Office version 11 software. Please be aware that some of the configurations may be different if you have a lower version of software on your in-house system. There will be information covered by the means of images and narration. Also, demonstrations will be given by video as to how to perform certain tasks. We hope by the end of the course you feel confident to use the software management tool to create and edit users, program features for them, and customize their profiles. In addition, we will cover system features to enable you to process an incoming call from start to finish for daytime and nighttime scenarios. We will start this course by looking at the overview of IP Office hardware and its major components, followed by the software interfaces which are required to manage your IP Office from day to day. Using this software, we will take you through selected system settings, including licensing and system shortcodes, moving then into the creation and management of extensions and users. This will include voicemail, button programming, user rights, self-administration, and using the Equinox client, which will then lead us into creating hunt groups and time profiles for the purpose of incoming calls and activating automatic night service for the system. We will also look at creating the system directory and the backing up the IP Office configuration, 1X portal, and voicemail messages and greeting. Finally, we will look at an overview of voicemail systems and compare the differences, and 1X portal. For further information on subject covered in this course, we recommend that you use the Avaya knowledge base. Please use the link provided at the end of the course. After completing this learning object, you will be able to understand the physical differences between IP Office Server Edition and IP Office 500 version 2, along with the application, which run either integrally or residing on a separate PC, which you may also have on your premises. The IP Office comes in two versions: the IP Office 500 version 2, which we see here in this slide, and IP Office Server Edition. The main difference between the two is the hardware. IP Office 500 version 2 is a traditional box running the IP Office software, and the Server Edition is a Linux-based server, also running the IP Office software. It is important to understand which one you are using, as they do vary in size and the types of phones and lines they support. IP Office 500 version 2 supports up to 384 digital and analog extensions. It also supports IP and SIP telephony, ISDN, and analog lines, whereas the Server Edition supports up to 3,000 extensions, none of which are digital or analog. Since analog and digital lines are not supported, it means less hardware. Everything connected to the Server Edition works over a LAN. Having said that, you can use the IP Office 500 version 2 as a gateway with the Server Edition to support digital and analog services. Both support Voicemail Pro and Avaya 1X portal. With IP Office 500 version 2, these applications are run on separate Windows Server or via a Unified Communication Module UCM, which sit inside the IP Office 500 version 2 control unit, while the Server Edition can host them natively or on a separate application server, depending on the size of the system. For more information about the IP Office 500 version 2's integral cards and the Server Edition's capacity guidelines, please refer to the Avaya knowledge base. Please note, embedded voicemail is not supported on IP Office Server Edition. Server Edition is a fully integrated mid-market solution for 100 to 2,500 users. It has a central server, optimized for IP telephony, with extensive unified communications features. It can also grow with expansion systems to increase capabilities. Expansion units can include existing IP 500 version 2 systems or additional Linux-based servers. This all builds upon the rich heritage of Avaya IP Office. In this course, we intend to show you how to make changes to these two IP Office types. Although different in the way they look and what they support, the programming, managing, and administration of them is the same. They can both use the manager and web management applications to make moves and changes to their configuration. And they both use the same interfaces for Voicemail Pro and the Avaya 1X portal. We will see the differences between using manager or web management as we go through this course, as we've designed it so that you get to use both. In some cases, you have to use manager, as this is the historic application for the IP Office product. Please remember that IP Office 500 version 2 and IP Office Server Edition can stand alone or be networked. This means you may have both products in different offices linked together to work as one system, as we'll see on the next slide. Here we have a primary server. All other components are optional and can be added at any time to add capacity if the size and number of sites increases over time. The secondary server edition and expansion units are used to increase the overall capacity of the solution. In smaller deployments, VM Pro and 1X Portal can run in the server edition platform. When the customer's size and communications volume increase, expansion systems help carry the extra loads. The components shown here are connected using Small Community Network or SCN, which is a method of multi-site networking, which enables commonality of features and management. The Server Edition has the traditional feel and friendly functions and management used in older IP Office systems. However, it can be used as the center for comprehensive administration and management for all components at all sites, with a secure web-based management application. A single IP Office Server Edition can handle all capabilities except for the legacy hardware analog and digital interfaces. If required, an IP Office 500 version 2 can be incorporated into the solution to support analog and PRI, ISDN lines, plus digital and analog phones, faxes, etc. When using the IP Office 500 version 2 for this purpose, it is known as a gateway in the network and can be very useful, as it enables you to use a larger variety of handsets and lines. Topics covered in this learning object include: understand the IP Office Server Edition and IP Office 500 version 2. After completing this lesson, you will be able to summarize the purpose of the IP Office Manager and Web Management applications, explain how to use the IP Office Manager and Web Manager applications to modify and create configuration files for the control unit. For the purpose of making changes to your IP Office, there are two applications you can use at present: the traditional Manager application, which has to be installed on a PC in your network, or the Web Management application, which uses a web browser to connect to the IP Office on your network. At present, Web Management cannot access all menus for configuration changes that Manager can, but this is due to change with upcoming releases of software. It does, however, give an excellent view of all systems in your network and their status, and is very easy to use and navigate around. Both applications use the same terminology when viewing a common screen. They just look and feel different. Also, when using Manager, you will have to save your changes before they take effect, and some of these changes may require a reboot. With Web Management, the changes are effective immediately. If you are using Web Management and need to access Manager, it is possible to download a version of Manager Lite. This will enable you to make changes which are not possible using web management, such as access to the system menu. It is also possible to download the VM Pro client and Avaya 1X portal client from web management. Both applications use the same usernames and password for access, and we will primarily be using web management in this course, but we will also use Manager where applicable. Now let's take a look at both applications and how to use them. Manager is part of the setup of the Admin Suite DVD. It is used to connect to the IP office so as to carry out tasks such as administration and day-to-day tasks, both of which you will be covering in the later modules. It is very easy to install Manager. The default settings are shown here, and you will want to install with the default settings as shown. Once installed, you will find Manager in the IP Office folder. You could then move the Manage icon to your desktop if you want. To open Manager, simply double-click on the icon. Manager has the advantage of being used without being connected to an IP office. You can alter existing configurations offline or create virtual IP offices and put your configurations into real IP office systems at your leisure. There are several different modes of Manager. It is important to note that the software level of the Manager application is 2 versions higher than the software level of the system software being managed. For example, Manager 10 was released with IP Office 8 core software. The menus and options displayed by Manager vary depending on the actions you are performing. Also, if you have your system upgraded, you should also upgrade your version of Manager so as to make the most of new features and functionality. Mismatches of software and Manager versions could cause you issues, as relevant screens will not have new features and settings incorporated in them. The simplified view allows you to choose whether to create a configuration offline for later use, open a configuration on a running system to examine or change it, or load an existing saved configuration into a system you are connected to. This is Manager's default mode when no IP Office configuration has been opened. This can be useful for looking at a configuration where there may be a problem, or look at a setup you might want to reuse. The Basic Edition administration mode will let you make basic changes, such as changing user settings and group settings. It has less capability, but is easier for new administrators to understand than the fully featured mode. Basic mode includes systems running Partner, Northstar, or Quick mode. The standard mode configuration is much more detailed than the Basic Edition administration mode. This is where you will spend most of your time. It allows you to make and create changes for the whole system. Here we see how easy it is to change from the advanced view to the simplified view. By clicking on the View option on the top taskbar, you can then select which view you wish to use. If you are using one view, you can alternate to the other view using this method. This is done before you open your configuration. To get into an IP office for the first time, launch Manager, select Open Configuration from System, or use the Open Config icon shown near the top of the Manager display. To find the IP office, a discovery program is used to look for IP office control units. By default, it uses the broadcast address of 255.255.255.255, which is shown in the lower left of the Select IP Office screen. This is fine for a local switched network, but a routed network needs a specific address for the unit you want to connect with. Routers will block broadcasts like this. When the IP Office system does appear, click on its checkbox and click OK. Enter your login username and password and click OK again. This username and password should be supplied by your Avaya business partner and may have some restrictions as to which screens and options you can edit. These restrictions can be changed on request. The configuration will appear, and you may begin to configure the system. Depending on your personal settings, the user interface consists of up to 4 panes. The pane arrangement can also be configured individually. Once you have the Manager open, You can then choose which of the panes you'd like to see. 3 of the small icons in the top left of the taskbar are highlighted. These represent the navigation pane, group pane, and details pane, which you can hide or display on your screen by clicking on the icons. The navigation pane, sometimes called the menu tree, is shown on the left. It gives a list of administrable items for setting up and programming. The group pane in the middle will then give you information on the option you have chosen. It is useful when you have a list of users, lines, or extensions. The detail pane lets you edit, delete, or simply view the item you choose from the group pane. The error pane is at the bottom. This will show you any errors or warnings while you are programming. It is quite useful to stop any mistakes while setting things up and making changes. As an example, if you wanted to give a user a power user license, you use all these panes in the order shown. You would go to the navigation pane and click on Users. The group panel would fill up with all the users in the system. You would then select your user, and the Details pane will then show you that user's settings. You could then click a drop-down box where you give users the license productivity features such as Power User, Mobile User, etc. You would assign this user the Power User license, and then click OK. At that point, you would get a blinking error message at the bottom if you didn't have any licenses left for this feature. Some items in the navigation pane can also be reached via the main toolbar at the top of the screen. The navigation toolbar has several of the commonly used items that are in the navigation pane. After the changes have been made, you will need to save the configuration for the changes to take effect. It is important that you save your changes as soon as possible. Do not leave the changes for a long period of time before saving them, as this can cause disruption to some users. This happens because when you open a configuration, it takes a snapshot of how the system is configured, and the longer you leave it before saving, the configuration could change, and you would then be saving an older configuration back to the system. For example, if you make your changes and don't save them straight after, another administrator could use their version of Manage, make their changes, and save them, and then you come back and save yours. This means you will overwrite all the changes your colleague had previously made. Hence, some uses have lost functionality which they had just received and had working. This can result in a call-out to an engineer or a fault being logged when there isn't one. Merging the config file back to the control unit modifies the settings without interrupting the working of the system. Certain changes to the config file, such as the IP address of the Voicemail Pro, will require a reboot of the control unit for changes to take effect in the working memory. When you click on File and then Save Configuration, the system informs you if it needs an actual reboot or simply a merge. If the system needs more than a merge to save your settings, you can then decide whether to use the immediate option for rebooting straight away or the Reboot When Free option for the system to reboot automatically when there are no calls in progress, or you can choose to reboot at a specific time later. Just remember, none of your changes will take effect until you have either merged or rebooted. The saved configuration file will also be saved as a config with the extension of .cfg in the specified working directory, so you will always have a copy of your latest system configuration. In this video, you will see how to navigate around Manager. It will cover how to open Manager, navigate the different panes within Manager and what they display, and how to save a changed configuration. Feel free to stop and start any of the videos or even view it more than once so as to get a good understanding of what is being demonstrated.
So where to next? The desktop and the Manager icon. Double click on the Manager icon. Oh look, it tells you what version it's running. It tells you what version of IP Office Manager is running on here, not necessarily the version of IP Office that you're running.
Oh, okay. So where's the IP Office now?
Well, we're still not quite there.
Oh.
We need to search for our IP Office. It can be done in two ways. You can either File, Open Configuration, or click on the Open Configuration icon. Now, it will look for any IP Office it can find, but I tend to find it quicker if you put in the IP address of your IP Office and just refresh.
There it is.
So we put a check mark next to it and we say OK. Now it gives us the username and is asking us for a password. If you'd like to type that password in, that password should be given to you by your installation team. Just give it a moment.
Okay.
You can see it's loading the configuration at the bottom. So this screen, you can have it looking however you want to. You've got 3 main panels: configuration, the display, and the error list down here. You don't have to show the error list. We can take it away, or we can put it back in. We can get rid of the navigation page, which is down the side here. And you can also move with your mouse the panes. Okay, in the configuration pane, I'm going to expand the configuration tree. This shows us all of the options we have in Manager and the things that we can change. Let's click on User. Here we see all of our users. And we have an error down the bottom here.
Oh, look at that.
A. Franco's new password is shorter than the specified minimum length. I'm going to go and change that password and make sure it's the same as what it should be. Now the minimum length can be set. Your maintainer can set your length of your passwords and the complexity of them. But you have to type them in both places. As you can see, you have password and confirm password. And I'm going to click OK.
Oh, look, the error disappeared.
It sure did. That's why it's quite useful to have the error list open. Other options that you can change for the user are set at the top here.
Is this the only place that we can make the changes?
No, all of the changes that you see that we're making here, or can make here, are also done in Web Manager. The Web Manager feels and looks very different to Manager, but the main major difference is that when you make changes in Manager, you have to save the changes before they take effect. So for example, this password, this new one we've just put in for Anthony Franco, he won't know about, he won't be able to use until I save the configuration.
Okay.
Whereas on Web Manager, as soon as you put it in, it updates automatically.
But you said okay. How do you save it?
Well, to save it, you're going to have to click on the Save Configuration file.
I see.
So we click just here. From the drop-down, we get all the reboot options. You can reboot straight away. You can set a timed reboot, which is quite useful, so you can set the system to reboot out of hours. It doesn't disrupt any users. Or we can set the reboot when free, which means the system will automatically reboot as soon as all users are off the phone. Whilst rebooting, none of the users will be able to use the system. It could be quite disruptive in the middle of the day. But all we have to do is merge. So I'm going to click OK. It's going to ask us to enter the password again. Click OK. And you'll see that it's saving the configuration. You can see the progress bar will start working its way across. And as soon as we get to 100%,
There it is.
we come out of the configuration section. If we want to go back in, we would have to reopen the configuration.
So how do we do this in Web Manager?
Well, we're going to look at Web Manager next. But first of all, we have to look at the theory behind Web Manager.
There are 2 ways to access the Web Management landing page. Here we see the most simple one. By entering the IP address of the system, you will then be able to select IPOffice Web Management as seen in this slide. After that, you will be offered the login screen you see on the next slide. This will open Web Manager on the primary system if it is a Server Edition primary, secondary, or expansion. You will get a local Web Manager on systems that are not a Server Edition system, such as an IP 500 version 2. You may get a certificate error when you first log on to this page. If so, you can download the required certificates or continue, but the connection will not be secure. The other way to launch Web Manager is by entering http:// and the IP address of your server, followed by : and 7070/login as your URL. This page then provides a login page to the Web Manager, and it is the common management login page for Server Edition. Once you have logged in, all the other actions such as invoking the thick IP Office Manager program, the VM Pro client, the platform management functionality, and 1X administration should not require another login. The username and the password should be given to you by your IP Office installation team. Any upgraded systems will retain their own previous passwords. Here we see the Web Management Solution View screen, which shows all systems in the Server Edition solution, with a count of online and offline systems. This is the starting page for managing the whole solution. This page provides a component-level view of the whole mid-market system solution, meaning all the Avaya IP Office components that are networked together. Here we see the start of this page. It includes links to other key management tools, such as Manager, 1X Portal Administration, and Voicemail Pro, as well as key solution administrative tools such as Upgrade and Backup, Restore. The call management option will allow the consolidated management of users in the whole solution in the same window. The platform opens with the platform management screen, where you can select a specific platform in the solution. From Web Manager, the configuration of the following IP Office parameters will be available for IP 500 version 2 and Server Edition. Under the Call Management drop-down menu, you can select to configure users, extension, groups, and the auto attendant for embedded voicemail. Please remember, the embedded voicemail is only available on IP Office 500 version 2. When you select User, all users are displayed. From here, you can add, delete, or edit users. On the left of the screen, there is a very useful filter, so you can select certain users or users who are assigned to particular user rights. Also, you will find a search bar at the top of the user form, which allows you to search users by name. All search and filter features are common to all configuration forms in the Web Manager, whether it be hunt groups, users, or the system directory. IP Office Manager does not have these features. When you select to edit a user, you can give users a name, number, voicemail, etc. The options you find here are identical to those in Manager. The same also applies for the extensions, hunt groups, and auto attendant options under Call Management. More configuration options are available from the drop-down menu for system settings such as short codes, incoming call routes, time profiles, the system directory, locations, licenses, system, IP routes, services, alternate route selection, account codes, lines, firewall profiles, authorization codes, RAS, WAN ports, and user rights, all of which can be found in Manager. All options found here will take you to the same screens with the same settings that you will see in the thick Client Manager, which we looked at earlier. You may wish to compare the Manager and Web Manager. They both provide the same service for day-to-day maintenance. It really just comes down to preference. Here, we see that in the Application drop-down menu, you can download a version of Manager Lite if required, which is useful if you do not have Manager loaded on your PC. Web Manager also provides the ability to configure the Voicemail Pro system preferences for Server Edition, Call Flow Management, Avaya 1X Portal, UCM, and the Application Server. This is not supported for Voicemail Pro running on Windows. In this video, you will see how to navigate around Web Manager. It will cover how to open Web Manager, the different panes within Web Manager, and what they display.
Okay, so let's have a look at Web Manager. The easiest way to use Web Manager is to open one of your internet browsers. We're going to use Chrome. And as soon as it opens up, the easiest thing to do then is to put in the IP address of your IP office and nothing more. As you can see, we have tried connecting to it before here. But if you just put a space, that's great. Just the IP address. It's now going to go and look for our IP office. It doesn't matter whether you're using Server Edition or you're using IP Office version 2.
Oh, look. It says here a different version again. So is this now the version of Web Manager?
No, this is the version of the system.
Oh, okay.
It's connected straight on.
Okay.
So you've got several options here, and we want Web Manager. The nice thing about Web Manager is going to come up and ask us for a username and password. We use exactly the same one as we did with Manager. You don't have to have different usernames and passwords. So if in here you just type administrator, because that was the username we were using, and then enter the password, click login, we're onto Web Manager. As I said earlier, it does look and feel very different. To get our various options, we have to click at the top on the black bar. So in Call Manager, we get to look at extensions, groups and users. Whereas in System Settings, we get account codes, alternate route selection, authorization codes, etc. All the same as we had on Manager. So if we go back to Call Management and click on User, we see again all of our users, just laid out very differently. The other nice thing that Web Manager does is it gives you the option to be able to filter your users when you're looking for things. So you can filter them by even what hunt groups they belong to.
That makes it easier.
Or you can just type in a user's name and it will find them for you. So if you put in JJ, anybody beginning JJ will come up. Obviously, the more users you've got, the more useful that search tool is. To edit, we just click onto the pencil at the end. And here we can make the changes that we wish to the screen using the slider to go up and down. And whereas you had the options across the top, now you have them running down the left-hand side. Let's make a change in this one. And you'll see that it very, very quickly updates without having to merge.
Okay.
Let's change this user's name. Now let's make a change to Judith. Let's say we want to put the J at the end of her name and remove it from the beginning. I don't have to merge, I don't have to save, all I do is update.
Oh, that's easy.
And it'll give you a prompt at the top to say that Judith has been updated. All really nicely, easily done.
It is easier.
Show all users. I'm going to change her back again. Just so it follows nicely with our very neat set out users. Again, just update.
So can we do anything else on here, like system settings or so?
We can do system settings, but first of all, we need to go back to the theory pages.
Topics covered in this learning object include: summarize the purpose of the IP Office Manager and web management applications, Explain how to use the IP Office Manager and Web Manager applications to modify and create configuration files for the control unit. After completing this learning object, you will be able to understand the use of the various settings in the System tabs, summarize the various IP Office 500 licenses available, and define the use of the different IP Office system licenses. Initial system-wide configuration will be done in the System tab. The menu tree on the left has a list of configurable items. The IP office named London has been double-clicked, and it opens up as you see here. On this page, you have several settings for the IP office regarding the environment that it is in. This System tab for the London IP office system is populated on installation. You mostly just need to check settings. Changes to settings in this tab may require a reboot. Now let's take a look at some of the commonly used settings. The system name, locale, and IP addresses for the TFTP, HTTP, and the time server are all set under the System tab. The default system name for the IP office is its 12-character MAC address. You may click on this field and change the name. The locale setting changes several of the IP office internal settings depending on which locale, country is selected. For example, this selection will change the language or accent for recorded prompts, settings for the outside line impedance, and other parameters. The location specifies a location to associate the system with a physical location. Associating a system with a location allows emergency services to identify the source of an emergency call. The drop-down list contains all locations that have been defined in the location page. The big square red box highlights a list of basic critical settings for the IP office. The first few deal with binary firmware and script files that are used by IP and digital phones, IP Office modules, and the IP Office unit itself. These devices look for information when they are powered up, and these settings define how they get it. IP phones usually use DHCP to get an IP address, and are also given the address of their file server, call server, and more. These phones then use TFTP or HTTP as transport protocols to get firmware files. They also get script files that download phone settings configured by an administrator. The IP office has a built-in DHCP server for IP phones, plus TFTP and HTTP servers, and is commonly used for serving up the required binaries and scripts. Also highlighted is the feature key SD card number or the system ID number for your licensing. It is always a good idea to take a note of this number. When you are running the Manager program, you may always press the F1 key or click Help to get comprehensive help about any page you are on. Other sources of this information are in the IP Office knowledge base at support.avaya.com. The IP Office time of day is either set manually, obtained using time protocol requests, or obtained using Simple Network Time Protocol, SNTP. This field is used to select which method is used and to apply time zone offsets based on the selected method. None sets the system to make no time requests. SMTP uses one server or a list of SMTP servers to obtain the UTC time. A Voicemail Pro or Manager server can be used as time server, and they provide both the UTC time value and the local time set on the PC. For server edition networks, the primary server is defaulted to use SMTP services on the web at 0.pool.ntp.org to obtain the time and date. The secondary server and expansion servers are defaulted to use SMTP to obtain their time from the primary server. For other IP Office systems, the default is getting the time from the PC running the Voicemail Pro or Manager. This option should not be used with server edition systems and systems with a unified communication module, as in those scenarios, the voicemail server is being hosted by and getting its time from the same server as the IP Office. The voicemail type and specific voicemail settings are set under the Voicemail tab. You specify whether you use an embedded voicemail or an external PC with Voicemail Pro or other Voicemail Pro variations like centralized voicemail or distributed voicemail. Fields are enabled or grayed out as appropriate to the selected voicemail type. You also set the mode to IP Office mode or Intuity mode, which behaves like the Intuity voicemail that Avaya has used for 2 decades. Millions of people around the world are familiar with it. System-wide telephony settings for several timers are set under the Telephony tab. The Telephony tab is used to configure a wide range of general telephony settings for the whole system, such as the default hold time, park time, and no answer time. These affect the time before calls are forwarded to a different destination if not answered. These times can also be set in the individual's user tab. Note the checkbox for Inhibit Off-Switch Forward or Transfers. This is a common source of tech support calls, because users may not be able to forward their calls to their cell phones when this is checked. However, when the box is unchecked, you may have fraudulent long-distance calls or even calls to premium rate numbers being made from your system or from an outside hacker. Please note some of the changes in the System tab will require a reboot of the system. You will be prompted if a reboot is required, so any major changes to this tab should be done out of hours. Before exploring the licensing, let's review the types of Avaya IP Office editions available to you. The most simple IP Office deployment is the Basic Edition for smaller, simpler sites. The Essential Edition goes a step beyond the basic, supporting mobile worker engagement. The Preferred Edition provides robust team, mobile, and customer engagement, supporting many more features and users. The Server Edition provides a software-based solution that is larger and has the centralized administration suitable for widespread networks with many sites and applications. The Server Edition Select provides higher capacity still, plus additional features and resiliency on a software-based solution. Now, before we look more in depth at licenses, please remember that your licenses are usually installed by your installation team, and any additional licenses you require going forward should be ordered by and installed by your maintainer. User Productivity Licenses. The 7 productivity licenses shown here enable bundles of feature entitlements for typical user roles such as outside salespeople and field technicians, senior management, people who work from a home office, and more. The features within each bundle are either assigned to specific users, such as a teleworker, or can be in a pool, such as the receptionist or endpoint licenses, which are taken up when used and released for reuse when the user logs out. System licenses enable features system-wide for the whole population of users. The Essential Edition license and SIP trunk licenses are examples of system licenses. Group collaboration licenses. The Basic, Essential, and Preferred editions shown on screen represent increasingly powerful capabilities that a customer can have when they buy a system, or when they want to upgrade. They each come with a set of system-wide capabilities. Each also enables the addition of user productivity licenses, which are purchased separately. For example, the Preferred edition comes with call recording, and it also enables the customer to buy more types of user productivity licenses. As shown here, the Preferred edition adds more user productivity licenses than the Essential edition has. Please note, IP Office Basic Edition mode is not supported in IP Office Release 10.0. Instead, new systems default to IP Office Essential Edition mode. The configuration of existing systems upgraded to Release 10.0 is automatically converted to an IP Office Essential Edition mode configuration. New systems, therefore, require an Essential Edition license before the system can be used. Here we see a feature comparison between the Basic and Essential editions. You can see that it affects the quantities of extensions, trunks, conference calling, and the number of auto attendants. The Basic Edition has no support for user profiles such as receptionist or mobile workers, so it would suit a smaller and basic type customer. This diagram demonstrates the user profiles with the functionality that is enabled for each one. It starts with the basic user having only the mailbox and goes up to the power user, which has everything found in the basic user, teleworker, office worker, and mobile user. The office worker includes a 1X portal license, but this particular license does not have the telecommuter feature that the teleworker license includes. The telecommuter feature allows a remote user to log into the IP office with a PC for call control, plus system features, but use any phone for the voice part of the call. Please also note that the user licenses and functionality travel with the user over an SCN to other IP office sites. You can select one profile type for each user as desired, with basic user being the default profile. Only the licensed profiles appear for selection. For the user shown here, whose name is Alex Land, only a basic, a power user, or office worker could be chosen. Without the preferred edition license, the user profile will be dormant, not selectable in this screen. The basic licenses are free of charge and do not require a preferred edition license. The non-licensed user profile is used for users that do not require any user license. Non-licensed users are allowed to be used for authentication to allow remote access, make internal emergency calls as non-user, associated analog extensions used as paging speaker or MOH source, forward calls to voicemail, and act as the slave of a twin user. The following options are displayed in the user record under Profile in Manager, but is dependent on the profile you have. If your profile does not support these features, they will be grayed out. Here, we see the power user profile and the features it supports. The most commonly used ones are Receptionist. This allows the user access to log on to the soft console feature if loaded onto their PC, plus an additional receptionist license is required. The Enable Avaya 1X portal services and Enable Avaya 1X telecommunicator are for Avaya 1X users, while Enable Remote Worker is for those who wish to work from home. From IP Office version 10 software, licenses have moved to a PLDS system. When upgrading to version 10 and above, you will need to convert all licenses to PLDS licensing, and the licensing form will look different, as we see here. License can be issued from either a remote server using WebLM or a local file. The remote server will give you licenses required by your system dependent on your configuration. For example, if you have 5 power users, it will only issue you 5 power users. This option is more commonly used for networked installation, whereas if you use the local option, the licenses are held on a local PC, and when you import them, it will import all instances you have purchased. Licenses are issued against your PLDS license from IP Office version 10. The PLDS host ID can be found in the license form. Here, we see what license and how many instances have been issued. Licenses can be imported from files sent to you and held locally. They are imported by clicking on the Add button and removed by clicking the Remove button. In this video, you will see how to view system setting and licenses on the system. Although there will be very little you will need to change on any of these screens, it is good to know what they are and what they affect in the system.
Okay, so let's have a look at the overall system settings.
Oh, we're in Web Manager though.
Yeah, we're in Web Manager. But we can do everything in Web Manager that we can in Manager.
Oh, cool.
So to get to the system settings, I've gone to System Settings at the top and then System. This is our system. I'm going to expand this menu by clicking on the box at the end here. So Just a few settings in here that you need to be aware of as a customer. The name here of the IP office. This is the name we have, but you could put your company name here, anything you wanted. Okay. Moving down the side here, we go to voicemail. We can see which type of voicemail we're using. And the IP address of the voicemail. We're using Voicemail Pro. This Voicemail Pro is running on the server. So that's the reason it's got the same IP address as what we see the IP office to have. If you wanted to know what the IP address is, or if it needed changing, you could change them here. But please note, they can only be done in an offline mode if you're using Web Manager. And also, if you do change these kind of settings, the system will need a reboot. The most common ones in here for us to know about is in telephony.
Why is that?
Well, because there's system settings that would affect every user. Whatever you set in here, however, can be set per user as well. There's a couple of exceptions. So for example here, the default no answer timeout, this is the time the phone rings before it will follow an instruction. That instruction is usually going to voicemail or going to your divert you might have set up on no reply.
So that changes it for every user?
It sets it as the default for every user. You can, however, change that setting per user as well under their own user form. You've got a hold timer here as well. So when you put a call on hold from your handset, it's going to hold that person for 15 seconds before it rings you back. It's a little bit of a short time, yeah? So this is the kind of thing that you may want to customize. And you can either enter in, say, a minute, which I think probably is a little bit more realistic, or more or less. I'm going to click an update on that one. So now when you put a call on hold, the system will hold it for 60 seconds and then will ring your phone back. Having it any shorter sometimes confuses users because their phones are ringing and they don't quite understand. Just go back to that telephony screen again. We have another timeout here, the park timeout. Now the park feature can be associated with your soft buttons on certain phones, so that users can park a call and tell other users to pick that call up off of that park button. It'll stay on that park slot for 300 seconds. But you would have to set up the buttons to be able to use it as well.
What buttons?
The soft buttons on the phone that I mentioned.
Where do we do that?
Well, we're going to come on to button programming a little bit later on. There are other settings on the system menu. One of them that you might be interested in is how to stop people forwarding or transferring calls off switch. We can set this to no.
What does that mean? I don't understand.
That means that if users tried to transfer a call, say to somebody's mobile or to any external number, this would stop them doing it. They wouldn't be allowed to do it.
That makes sense.
But it really is preference. That's pretty much all the options in system menu that would affect us as users. Everything else has been set up on the installation. And I would recommend that you don't change it.
What about licensing? Don't we have to do that as well?
Well, the licensing's done on the installation, but we can certainly go and look at what licenses you've got. Always useful to know these sorts of things. So if I go back to system settings at the top here and come and find licenses, again, it will bring up which system I want to look at. And I click on the box at the end, and here I see my licenses. It's nice to see they're all valid. But it also tells me how many instances I have of each one. So I have one receptionist, for example. I've got one office worker. And I've got 4 power users. Now, if you do need any more, it's a case of contacting your maintainer. They will order them and they will install them for you. But please keep up to date on how many you've got of what. Because sometimes, for example, with power users, if you haven't got enough, you'll find that users are limited to what they can do.
Are we going to look at further limitations next?
Well, there are things that affect the system,
Okay.
which would be shortcodes.
Ah, all right. Where do we find those?
Well, let's first of all go back to some theory and have a look at the theory about shortcodes.
Okay,
Okay?
right.
Topics covered in this learning object include: summarize the various IPOffice 500 licenses available, define the use of the different IPOffice system licenses. After completing this learning object, you will be able to understand the use of the shortcodes in the IPOffice. We will also look at commonly used shortcodes. Shortcodes are woven into fabric of the IPOffice and are used for many things in many places. And although you will never need to know or touch some of them, they can be a very handy tool for setting features and functions across the system. Certain shortcodes have priority over other shortcodes based upon their type. Single-digit shortcodes take priority over everything in the system, including directory numbers. This diagram shows the hierarchy of shortcodes, starting with user shortcodes, which have the highest priority, and then moving down to the user rights, and then system shortcodes, which are the most widely used, going down to the alternate route selection, and finally, the line shortcodes, which have the least priority. Shortcodes are primarily used by users for invoking features and for options such as call barring. You can assign shortcodes to buttons on a user's handset, or they can dial them. For example, if they have an analog handset and want to put their phone in Do Not Disturb, they can dial *08. To remove it, they can dial *09. They can also be used for putting the system in and out of night service or taking a user in and out of group. Calls can be routed to shortcodes for the purpose of routing a call to the voicemail pro to answer the call and give a menu option to the caller. We will take a look at some of these scenarios as we go through this learning object. The System Shortcode menu can be found under System Setting in Web Management. This contains a list of default shortcodes and any which have been specifically created for your system. To edit them, you must first click on the Common Codes tab. If you are in a network, you can select the specific system you want to look at by using the Configure filter. To edit an existing shortcode, click on the pencil icon on the far right of the code. To add a new shortcode, click on the Add Shortcode button in the top right of the screen. If you require help at any time with some of the information in shortcodes, remember you can always click on the question mark in the very top right of the screen. The code field corresponds to the digits dialed by the user. Whether you click to edit or add a new shortcode, you have to understand the fields within the shortcode to understand what the shortcode is doing for you. Here, we talk about the shortcode fields. Shortcodes are specific dialed numbers that use system programming operations. There are many characters that may be used within a shortcode. The code field is what the shortcode will trigger on. When the code is dialed, either manually or automatically, the system sees it and the feature will be used. It is always wise to start a shortcode with an asterisk or #, so as not to have number collision with numbers you may wish to dial, like your extension numbers or group number. although there are exceptions to this rule, as we will see shortly. The feature field corresponds to the system feature the shortcode will use. The feature is the action that the shortcodes will do. Features include dialing, enabling or disabling groups, forwarding calls, turning the contact closure switch on and off, and a lot more. There are over 100 of them. The telephone number field has numbers the feature will use. When needed, the telephone number field is used as part of the selected shortcode feature. This example is using the forward number feature. It does not turn forwarding on and off. It simply lets you set the forwarding number. You would use this shortcode at a specific extension. The shortcode 07N, followed by the pound sign, allows you to input the number you want calls forwarded to, that come into the extension you are at when you enter the shortcode. The shortcode 07N, followed by the pound sign, allows you to input the number you want calls forwarded to that come into the extension you are at when you enter the shortcode. In this screenshot, when 07 is dialed, the system will expect you to enter a number N followed by the pound sign. N is the number that the system will forward to when a call comes in. The pound sign indicates when you are done. It's like the Enter key on your PC's keyboard. Again, this example just sets the destination number. There are several options for forwarding calls, each with a separate shortcode. The line group ID is used with dialing shortcodes to select the outgoing group ID or an ARS route to use with the dial feature. This field is used for shortcodes that result in a number to be dialed. It acts as a drop-down from which either an outgoing line group or an ARS form can be selected, so as to choose the outside line for the call. ARS is another way to select outbound lines to use, based on the number being called. The locale can be set by using the drop-down list. Account code entry can be required. The locale in this shortcode, if set, is used if the call is routed to voicemail. The locale sent to the voicemail server by the system will indicate a language for the system prompts to use. If the required language is not available, the voicemail will fall back to another appropriate language and finally to English. The force account code checkbox is used for shortcodes that result in the dialing of a number, such as this forward number example. When checked, the user is prompted to enter a valid account code before the call is allowed to continue. This is frequently used in large corporations to track, and perhaps bill back, those people making international calls. Please note, you must click Update to save your shortcode or changes you have made to it. Shortcodes can be applied to single users. User shortcodes are only applied to numbers dialed by that user. For example, they are not applied to calls forwarded via the user. Here, we are applying a shortcode to the user Alex Land. He will not be able to make international calls. If he dials 001, which is the international prefix used to dial an international number, this shortcode will stop the call. This shortcode could also be applied to a user rights template, and that template could be used for many users. Shortcodes can also be put into a user right. The user rights shortcodes take priority over system shortcodes. We can put many shortcodes and many other settings into a user rights group, name the group, and then assign users to be members of the group. This is a convenient way to administer the settings for several people who have the same job function. The group named Agent is one of the 8 default group names in user rights in the navigation pane. In this example, international call barring is being applied to the user right called Agent. Anyone who has been assigned to the Agent group will have international dialing blocked. This blockage could be overridden by individual user shortcode, such as one that would send them out a low-cost line for international calling. Remember, ensure there are no conflicting shortcodes between the user's shortcodes and the user rights shortcodes. Shortcodes can be programmed for lines. They only apply to incoming calls on that particular line. These shortcodes are used to translate incoming digits received with calls. The stage at which they are applied varies between different line types and may be overridden by an extension number match. Line codes are not used with all types of trunk. On trunks where they are used, they only work in particular operation modes. The stage at which they are applied also varies. IP trunks. Line short codes are used if small community networking, SCN, is not being used, or no SCN user extension match occurs on the digits received. If no line short code match occurs, then normal incoming call routing is applied. BRI and E1 trunks. These types of trunks use line short codes immediately. If no short code match occurs, then normal incoming call routing is applied. QSIG and SO trunks. SO, BRI trunks, and E1 and T1 trunks set to QSIG mode use line short codes if the digits received do not match an internal extension number. These types of trunk do not use incoming call routing. Dialing 9 for an outside line. By default, the IP office allows you to dial any number to the outside world. This will, however, cause trouble when the first few digits you dial are someone's extension. If you want your users to dial 9 to get outside trunk line, then the short code above will have to be in the system short code menu. This is one of the exceptions when you do not use the asterisk or pound sign in the code. When anyone dials a 9 plus a phone number, the IP office sees the 9, then saves the numbers following it to the variable n. The feature is dial, so the IP office will select an outside line and dial the digits that n represents. The line taken will be the first available one on line group ID 0. As we know, you can have night service activated automatically using time profiles. But if you want to be able to manually control night service, this is done with shortcodes. You will have to create two shortcodes, one to set night service and one to clear night service. The codes you use are up to you, as long as they don't conflict with other codes. Here we see *88 to set night service and *89 to clear it. It is important to then enter the group you want to put into night service. In this example, the group main is being used. Please note that the word main has speech marks, also called quotation marks. This is necessary for the shortcode to work. Once the codes are created, you can either dial them from a phone or assign them to a button on a specific user's telephone. Shortcode for call pickup for analog phones. This is a shortcode for call pickup in group main. If you have a lot of analog or IP 500 phones, then these types of codes are very useful, as those phone types have no buttons. Withhold your number when out dialing. It is useful to know that there are special characters that can be used in the telephone number field, such as W, which will tell the system to dial out, but withhold the number you are dialing from. For other special characters, please use the help pages for an explanation. Topics covered in this learning object include: understand the use of the shortcodes in the IP office. After completing this learning object, you will be able to define the various types of extensions the IP office supports. It is important to understand that the IP Office Server Edition does not support digital and analog phones or trunks. Only IP and SIP connections are supported on the server-based IP Office. The hardware-based IP 500 version 2 is needed to work as a gateway for these extensions. This is also true for ISDN or analog lines. It is important to understand how the IP Office treats these extensions and how to view and add new ones. Digital and analog extensions are created automatically by the IP Office 500 version 2. If you add a new analog or digital phone expansion module, the system will find them and create extensions for the new ports that it sees. Extension ID is a physical ID of the extension port generated by the system only for its internal use. For analog and digital extensions, it is not configurable with SIP or H.323 VoIP extensions. However, this setting can be changed. The base ID is the configurable directory number of the extension's associated user. It is the extension number that you dial to reach the extension. In Manager, there is a telephone icon associated with the phone extensions for digital or analog phones, and for VoIP phones, the icon is a red LAN cord connector. Again, when you create an extension in the Server Edition's Web Manager, you will only be offered to create either an H.323 or SIP extension. You can display and sort extensions by type in the Group pane. You can click on any of the column headers, and it will sort by that column. Here we see the same extension screen in Web Management. It is the same as in Manager, just laid out differently. The beauty of Web Management is that it has the benefit of seeing all extensions across the networked solution. It also has a panel on the left that allows you to select by type, to make new, and to search easier. H.323, IP-DECT, or SIP extensions can be added by right-clicking on the extension item in the menu tree on the left. Alternatively, you may click on the little folder icon in the upper right corner as shown in this screenshot. However, as you will see shortly, when you create a user, you will be offered to create an extension for the user, so it is not necessary to create all your extension in this way. To add an extension in Web Management, click the Add Extension button, then select the extension type and the system the new extension is to be created on. As you see, the actions are similar for both Web Management and Manager. This principle is the same throughout the programming, unless stated otherwise. Apply a base extension number which is consistent with your extension range. Web Management will require you to give the extension a password to register to the IP office. This enables you to log into the extension with a phone. We are only creating an extension here and not a user, as you can have many more users than extensions if you want, of which any user can be logged on to this extension. We will be covering creating a user shortly. With Web Manager, existing extensions can be modified by clicking on the pencil icon or in Manager by clicking on an individual entry. The extension ID is used by the IP Office software. The base extension is what you dial to call the phone. The different settings under each extension type for the specific settings are usually set to industry standards and rarely need changing. Calls are never routed directly to physical or logical extensions. Calls are always directed to a user within the IP Office system because the user's phone may change. For any call to be presented to an endpoint, whether that be digital, IP, SIP, or analog, a user must be associated with the extension. Topics covered in this learning object include: define the various types of extensions the IP Office supports. After completing this learning object, you will be able to understand how to configure and customize user settings to get the best out of the system for your users. The user form can be found under Call Management. This form is where most of the configuration of users is done. We have broken it down into several different learning objectives accompanied by a demonstration. To edit a user's settings, use the pencil icon to edit or use the trash bin on the right of the screen to delete the user. To view certain users, you select them by type on the left pane and search through users per hunt group per IP office system or by typing in their name in the search bar at the top of the screen. Please remember this function is only available in Web Manager. To add a user, click on the Add User button in the top right of the screen. In an SCN network, you will be offered to choose which system you wish to add the user to. On the next slide, you will see the same function on Manager. In the Thick Client Manager program, new users can be added by right-clicking on the user item in the menu tree on the left. Existing users can be customized by selecting the user entry found in the group window, sorted by name or number. Tabs for user configuration options run along the top of the User Details window. In Web Manager, menu options are listed down the left side of the screen. Click to select them if required. When you create a new user or edit an existing one, the fields are the same whether you use Web Management or Manager, although their layouts look different. Now we will look through some of the common fields and tabs used to customize each user. Name. It's the field that corresponds to the user's mailbox name. Usually it's the user's handle or nickname, or first initial and last name. It is case sensitive, supporting a maximum of 15 characters. Do not use punctuation and characters such as pound, question mark, or /. Only alphanumeric characters and the space character are supported in this field. In an SCN, names must be unique. Names should not start with the space. Full name. It's the field used by the dial by name directory and the name that is displayed on phones that are called. The full name field will hold 30 characters maximum. Password. It's the password that's required for Avaya 1X portal or Avaya Equinox client when in use. Please note that it is not the voicemail password, which is found under the voicemail field. Extension. It's the number you dial to call the user. Profile. Depending on what licenses you have in the IP office, here is where you assign productivity licenses, such as power user, to specific users. Note that these profiles only appear here. Login code. This code is used for hot desking and login onto the phone. Any password or login codes must be 6 digits or more in length and must not be consecutive number or match your extension number. You will get a warning if the password or login code rules are not met. Please note that the login code is found under the Telephony Supervisor tab in Manager. Note, it is possible to set up more users than available extensions. For example, you can set up logical users that can use the hot desking functionality that do not have a physical extension. If at any time you need more information about a field, please see the Help menu in the top right of the screen. It will take you to the Help page of the screen you are viewing. Still on the same page but further down, you will find additional user settings. Checkboxes control added functionality for the user. Note that some may be grayed out if a license is not available for that feature. The items in the upper red box are examples of this. The user rights, time profiles, and templates shown here are covered in separate learning objects. When you are done with your selections on this web page, you may save the settings as a template and also update user. If you are using Manager, you will need to click OK, save your changes, and then Save Configuration. All changes in the user screen are mergeable. In the Telephony menu, you will find 5 telephony subtabs. Let's now take a look at some of the commonly used fields in these menus. Here we see highlighted the No Answer Time. We have also seen this in the System menu, which is where you set the default no answer time for all users. In this User Telephony Call Settings tab, you can set the no answer time to suit the individual user. This timer affects the time in seconds that a user's phone will ring before it goes to voicemail or is otherwise forwarded. Under the Telephony Supervisor Settings tab, you can set a logon idle time. It is used when a user is idle for too long, then they will be logged off the phone. The Monitor and Coverage Group settings allow you to choose the groups that the user can monitor, which means this user can listen in or possibly intrude on the selected group's calls. The Coverage Group selection assigns this user to a ring group chosen from a drop-down menu, like a hunt group with no features. These small groups have members whose phones all ring at the same time to cover a department like accounting or perhaps a top manager's extension. At the bottom of this screen, you can enable or disable certain features, such as forwarding to external numbers, intrusion privacy, barring of outgoing calls, and other features. The Telephony Multi-Line tab is for configuring coverage ring types and timers as needed, but one of the most important settings is also found here. Reserve Last CA. This Reserve the Last Call Appearance button on the user's phone is for outgoing calls only, ensuring that the user will always be able to call out at any time, no matter how many live calls they are handling. This feature is always set to No in default, but it is a good idea to change it so as not to cause a call blockage situation on a user's telephone. Please remember, if they cannot make a call on at least one of their appearance keys, then they will also not be able to transfer or even forward any calls either, if all the line buttons are in use. The Telephony TUI tab has 10 user features that are normally set with the system defaults. The user setting in the first box here normally says Default, and the selections are all grayed out. If you select Custom, as is shown here, then they all become active for you to change any or all of them. In this screen, Self-Administration has been changed. Notice that you can save this as a template. In the forwarding screen, the call forwarding features can be set for the user. The features that are enabled for the user often have a shortcode assigned to a phone button for the person to use. Having their phone twinned with another number allows a user to make another number ring at the same time the user's desk phone rings. Either phone can answer the call. This is frequently used for users with decked wireless phones or mobile phones. This is very useful for anyone who has to work away from their desk. When the twin number is off-site and the IP office needs to make an outside call, there is sometimes a slight delay to ring the twin phone. Group membership shows the groups the user belongs to. The list of the user's groups is displayed, and a check mark for a listed group means the user is enabled and active in the group. If not, then the user is out of the group. In the Do Not Disturb tab, you can manually put the user in and out of the Do Not Disturb condition, but the user can also do this from their phone. In the exception list here, you can enter special phone numbers which can dial the user even when they are in Do Not Disturb. This can be an internal or external number. Recording of users' calls can be initiated from a user's telephone via a shortcode or an assigned button. The recording will go to the user's voice mailbox. Recording can also be done automatically via the settings on this screen, over which the user has no control. These automatic recordings can be sent to a specific mailbox. This is not recommended for automatic recording of all calls, as you can soon fill up the target mailbox with recordings. To trim down this volume of data, you can set a percentage of calls to be recorded if you just want samples of the calls. Avaya Call Recorder is an optional call recording application that automatically captures, indexes, and archives recorded calls to its own hard drive or partition. It has many useful recording choices. It has a broad set of search filters, and it can verify that the recording has not been altered. Whichever way you'd like to record a call, a voicemail port is used for it. So please make sure you have enough voicemail ports to accommodate the amount of simultaneous recordings. Each user has their own personal directory, which can be entered on their phone or in this menu. This directory will only display on this user's extension. It is also possible to import and export numbers in this directory. If the ICLID, incoming caller's line identity, is present on the incoming lines, then any incoming numbers matching the directory entry will display the name associated with that number. Topics covered in this learning object include: understand how to configure and customize user settings, After completing this learning object, you will be able to understand how voicemail works with users and hunt groups, whenever you create a user or a hunt group, a mailbox is automatically created too. By default, each user's extension number is set as a trusted number, as we will see on the next slide. Also by default, a mailbox is not given a voicemail code, which will not be a problem if your users are only going to access their mailboxes from their extensions. They can do this from their desk phones by either pressing the message button on their phones or by dialing the default shortcode *17. However, if you wish to let the users call in from different numbers, then you must enter a voicemail code for each user in this form. Users will have to enter this code to access the voice mailbox. The code must be a minimum of 4 digits in length. They must not be consecutive numbers and must not match the extension number. The voicemail settings are found in the user menu under the voicemail tab seen here in the upper left. You can also set up voicemail to email here, and a UMS, Unified Messaging Service, if the user has a required profile license. Another mailbox feature which can be set up in this screen is the ability for callers to break out of the user's greeting to an alternative destination. The user's recorded greeting must instruct the caller that they can press 0, 2, or 3, for example, to be routed to another number. The internal or external target number can be entered into the breakout DTMF fields present at the bottom of this screen. You can enter more than one trusted source for mailbox access. By default, only the user's extension number is entered into the source number field. Shown here, the entry is V200 for extension 200. It enables this user to dial into their mailbox from their extension, listen to messages, and change their greeting without entering a passcode. Calls from other extensions or from outside can leave messages, but those calls cannot get messages or change greetings without a login code. It is possible to enter more numbers in this field by clicking Add at the top right of the screen. These can be internal or external numbers, so if desired, you could put a user's mobile number in here, and that user would be able to dial into their mailbox from their mobile phone without entering a passcode. However, you must put a capital V in front of the number to indicate it is a trusted source. Hunt group mailboxes have similar settings to users. As mentioned before, when you create a hunt group, a mailbox is also created. It can be turned on and off, and it also requires a voicemail code in the same way as a user mailbox. Hunt group voicemail is different. In it, you can set a timer as to when the call goes to voicemail. such as after a call has rung in the group for 45 seconds and there is no answer. If an overflow group is created for the hunt group, please be careful setting the timers. If the overflow timer is longer than the voicemail timer, the call will always go to voicemail before the overflow group gets a chance to answer. If the call does go to an overflow group and then to voicemail, the message will be left in the mailbox of the group which was first called to save confusion. When a message is left in a user's mailbox, the message waiting indicator light will be illuminated on the phone. However, if a message is left in a hunt group's mailbox, no message waiting indication will be made unless you program one or more users to be notified. To do this, you must enter the hunt group number or name with a capital H in front of it in the user source number field, as we see here. The only way the user will know if the message is for their personal mailbox or for the group mailbox is by pressing the message button on their handset. They will then be able to see in the screen which mailboxes have messages in them. Only users with the hunt group name or number in their source number field will be offered this information. Multiple users can be responsible for a single mailbox. This is true for both hunt groups and for single users. When one of these users has listened to all new messages, then the light will go out on all of their phones. This prevents the duplication of messages taken by users. Topics covered in this learning object include: understand how voicemail works with users and hunt groups. Now let's take a look at how to create a new user with voicemail. In this demonstration, we will learn how to create a user which is ready to log on and be active in a matter of minutes. It is useful to keep in mind that when you create a user, you will be offered to create an extension also. Hence, the extension form is filled in automatically. Remember, if you do not assign an extension to a user, then they will act as a hot desk user, whose feature set will follow them wherever they log on.
So where to now?
So I think the next thing we need to do is add a user. So in the user form, we click on the button Add User. Then we say which system we're going to create the user for.
Why is that important?
Well, if it was a network system, then you may have more than one system.
Oh, of course. That makes sense.
We just have the one here.
Ooh, can I type?
Certainly. So our user is John Bates. So if we put J Bates just here, just so it carries on with the same consistent name as we've got for the other users.
The same naming convention, you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
And John Bates. Now we're going to give him a password. Now the password you see here is the password you would use for a Avaya Communicator, 1X Portal, or Avaya Equinox. It is not the voicemail password.
Okay.
A lot of people confuse it there. Give him an extension number. We're going to go with 1111. Okay. Now we'll look at the profile here, and at the moment they're a basic user. So let's make him a power user.
Why is that important?
Well, it's important if he wants to be able to use, for example, Equinox, or if he wants to use certain parts of the 1X platform. Now, just moving a little bit further down the screen, you see a login code. This, again, is very important. We have a login code. This allows a user, or this user, to be able to log on to a handset, a physical phone. So if you put in the login code for me, please, and confirm it. You wouldn't need this login code for Equinox or for 1X Portal, but you would if it was a standard handset.
Okay. Anything else that we have to do?
Not at this point in time.
Okay.
We can come back and change all these settings if we need to.
All right.
Let's just check his voicemail. Make sure that that's on. You see, it is turned on. It says yes there. Now, you don't have to put a voicemail code in here.
Okay.
because most users will dial in from their handset or whichever application they're logged on to, in which case it'll allow them to go into their voicemail without putting in a code. If they want to get into their voicemail from an external source or a different extension number, then they would definitely need a code here. So let's put one in just in case. I think we're set up for everything there. One thing that is really important that you must do, if you go to the telephony tab for me and come across some multi-line options. In the multi-line option tab, it's quite important that you make sure the reserve last CA is turned to yes.
Oh, why is that?
Well, CA stands for call appearance.
Okay.
And you know on your handsets, you get 3 call appearance buttons in default.
Oh, that's right, yes.
You don't have to have 3, you can have as little as 2,
Yeah.
but no less than 2.
A, B, C.
If you have a call coming on A, you can be talking away to a customer and a call can come in on B.
Yep. Happens all the time.
And you can put A on hold and speak to somebody on B.
Yep.
If you don't reserve the last call appearance, then another call whilst you're on A and B could come in on C.
Yeah, that has happened.
Problem then is, how do you transfer any of those 3 calls?
Well, it never worked.
That's because there's no appearance button to use for transfer.
No.
Select that and turn it to yes. Problem solved. It doesn't matter how many appearance buttons you have, the last one is always reserved for outgoing and transferring of calls.
Oh, that's very smart.
One other thing I'm just going to check, and this is about the voicemail. In your source numbers, can you see here we've got V1111. A moment ago we mentioned a password in the voicemail.
Yes.
And we said that if people are dialing in from their handsets, they don't need that code.
Okay.
The reason they don't need that code is because we have a trusted source in our source numbers,
Oh.
which is our own extension. You could, if you wanted to, add another one, and it might be their mobile number so they can dial in from outside.
Oh, how do you do that?
If you just put a capital V, then pop the mobile number in.
So that would be the mobile number then there.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then I can hit create, and it's put it in there.
Even though there is no such thing.
Yeah, well, you're not going to dial in with mobile number.
No.
Another thing you may see in here is an H followed by a group number or a group name. And that means that you are getting lamp indication for a group mailbox.
Can I then also get the messages from the group mailbox?
You certainly can. Okay, I think we're all good and ready there. So we're going to hit create.
Oh, look at that. Has been successfully added.
But now it's asking us,
Select extension.
select extension. So it's asking us what type of extension we want to make here. We don't have to make one. We can just have a user that's a hot desk, and they could be used for logging onto any handset they want to. Or we could make them H323 and fix them to a phone, or a SIP extension. What's your choice?
None?
Let's put the password in,
What password was that? Oh, the user password.
the user password.
Oh, I got it now.
After completing this learning object, you will be able to summarize the use of button programming for users to customize their handsets to best suit their needs. On the 1400 and 1600 series of handsets, the programmable buttons, often called soft keys, are either down the right-hand side of the phone or across the middle. All of the handsets have a removable strip of paper which can be taken out and written on for a description of the function on the button. These paper button labels can also be printed from a template, which is a neater way of doing it. Buttons may represent another user's extension. When a button is assigned to a different user, you can tell at a glance if that user is on the phone, and you can also instantly call or transfer calls to that user by pressing the user's button. Buttons may also represent an internal or external speed dial number, or may turn on features such as night service. Each time you use a button which has a user assigned to it, You are saving time not having to look up and then dial an extension, shortcode, or any other feature. Having programmed buttons is well worth the programming effort. It is also possible to create template for button programming, so as to assign the same buttons to many users quickly, as we will see later in this course. There are many other handsets which can make use of the button programming feature. Please refer to the Avaya knowledge base to get the most up-to-date list of supported handsets. With the 9600 series handsets, the buttons for programming are on the right-hand side of the screen. These have on-screen labels for each button. No one has to find the label template, fill out the information for each button, print it, cut it out with scissors, go to the phone wherever it is, remove the label cover, and then replace the old paper label. When you enter new label information using Manager, the labels are changed automatically for all phones affected, wherever they are. The label update happens when the user disconnects and reconnects power to the phone, and every night at midnight when the system refreshes itself. With labels up to date and coming straight from the IP Office 500 version 2, you are much less likely to find correction fluid painted onto the plastic label covers. The buttons can be modified under the User's Button Programming tab. Here we can program the specific buttons for Mr. Land's phone. Remember, we are programming for a user, not an extension, and that these button assignments will travel with Mr. Land wherever he may log in from. To add or edit the function of a button, you would click on one of the numbered lines in this screenshot and click the Edit Add Pencil icon at the end of the line you wish to change. At that point, you may enter a title for label, which is what will appear on the telephone's display. Clicking on the Action field will cause a drop-down menu to appear, with lots of choices to make as to what function this button will do. This will also put a default name in the label field, but you can change it to anything you want. Action data for the button you are programming will associate that button with the group or number you want to activate, such as the group or user you would want to pick up calls for. Other features allow the caller to enter information if the action data field is left blank. Other useful features to assign to buttons are Call Pickup, Call Park, DND, and Night Service on and off. The number of buttons you can program depends on the type of handsets you are using. The amount of characters on the label also depends on the handset you are programming for. You may want to create standard lists of programmed buttons for different user types, such as purchasing, sales, support, etc. You may put a list of programmed buttons in a user right and assign that right to specific users. We will look at user rights shortly. System features can be selected from the various drop-down sections and subsections. In this screenshot, we have clicked on the Action field for a new unprogrammed button, so we can assign Do Not Disturb to button 5. There are well over 150 selections here, and it will take a while to get familiar with these actions and how they work. The best way to familiarize yourself with the features is to take a look at them and use the Help function. In addition to all these choices, you can also assign a shortcode to a button. With the feature being set to the shortcode, user and external number can also be allocated to button. Here, we use the Manager button programming to select from the action data the advanced option, which then gives us the ability to select a host of options, one of which is Call Pickup Members. This is a very popular option for picking up calls from members within an existing group on the IP Office. Once you have selected Call Pickup Members in the action data, you will need to specify the group. You can select any group, as no group can be a pickup group only. Your group should contain all the users who wish to pick up each other's calls. Having said that, it's a good idea to label your group with a name, which indicate their purpose. For example, pick Group Sales. Group Page will allow you to create a button, which, when selected, will give you an audible bleep prompting you to speak. This will then be broadcast to all members in the group you have selected. The announcement will be played over the speaker of the user's handset. providing they are not on the phone and have a speakerphone. The Group Page option is found in the Action dropdown under Emulation. Once you have selected Group Page, in the Action data you will need to specify the group, and much like the Pickup feature, it can be broadcast to any group selected. Just make sure it has the required users in the group. Call appearance keys are what phones on the IP office use to handle incoming and outgoing calls. Each button can handle one call. Note that transferring a call uses 2 call appearances until the transfer is completed. When using appearance keys, it is useful to remember that a minimum of 2 appearance buttons should be used. Always check the Reserve Last CA, Last Call Appearance, in the Multi-Line Options tab of the user form. This ensures that at least one of the buttons is saved for outgoing calls only. This stops the problem of putting a call on hold to answer another call, and then finding that you need to transfer the second caller, but you can't, because both your lines are used. A transfer requires an additional third line for a moment, while the transfer is established. Rather than facing this problem now and then, it is better to have all the second callers go to the voicemail. Many of the users in an organization would benefit by simply having a third appearance. However, the same principle applies. Checking the Reserve Last CA checkbox in the user's Multi-Line Options tab under the Telephony tab is still a good idea, even with 3 lines available on a user's phone. A bridge appearance can be programmed to another user's buttons, so that they can monitor the appearance button of the original user. For example, in this diagram, John on extension 326 is monitoring Tom's third appearance button. If Tom's third line is ringing, he's probably busy with the other 2 and could use some help. Thus, by simply pressing the bridge appearance key, you can answer the call for him. There is also nothing to stop Tom from having your third appearance button, so as to help you out when you're busy. A coverage appearance alerts another person when a call is not being answered. It is a chance for someone else to answer before voicemail takes the call. The Call Coverage Appearance button can be used to answer that call. When a call to the covered user is unanswered for a length of time, the individual coverage timer expires on the covered user's extension. This alerts the covering person with a coverage appearance to answer the call by pressing that coverage button. This works very well in a manager-secretary setup, allowing the secretary to answer the manager's calls if the manager is busy or on another call. Note, the coverage timer needs to be shorter than the voicemail's no answer timer, or the call may go to voicemail first. For details on how to set up this feature, see Coverage in the Manager's Help function. Topics covered in this learning object include: summarize the use of button programming for users. After completing this learning object, you will be able to understand how to use the Manager or Web Manager to configure users' rights for groups of users. This is most commonly used to allocate button programming to many users quickly. There are a number of default user rights that can be modified. New ones can be added by right-clicking. The main reason for using user rights is so that you can give the same features and settings to several users at once, making the programming of each user quicker and easier. However, you have to take into consideration that for each feature or setting defined in the user right, you can't change that setting for just one user in the group. You'll need to change the setting in the user right, and it will affect all of the members who have had that right assigned to them. The 8 default user rights are shown here in this screenshot. They can be modified, but you should first review all the settings for each of them before you assign the right to the users. By clicking on the user rights item in the navigation pane, new user rights can be created, or you may create them by copying settings from an existing user. By default, each setting under the user right is not part of the user rights. If the setting is going to be applied to the members of the user right, Apply User Rights value must be selected from the drop-down list. It is not uncommon for this to be forgotten, and when you apply the user right to a user, the feature does not appear, so please double-check that you have done it. Button programming can be set under a user right. This allows a set of buttons to be applied to all the members selected for this user right. This does make it very quick and easy to allocate buttons to phones. However, please remember that these keys will be fixed and can only be changed within the user right. It's a good idea to leave a user with a few buttons which can be changed under their user form. This gives a better flexibility for the user and can make your job easier. For example, if a user wants a specific button for their handset and daily working, you could put it on the user right, but then all users will get that button and may have no use for it. So, if you leave a few spare, this will overcome that issue. Once you have created a user right, you can select which users are members of the user right under the User Rights Membership tab. This is not the only way to allocate a user right. It can also be done through the user menu too. It's also a good and quick way of viewing which users have this user right assigned to them, rather than going through every user form to find out who is assigned to which user right. Note that any setting that is applied under the user right is locked, as shown here on the left. Any setting that is not part of the user right is still available to be set individually for the user. This can create a very flexible working environment for a user. However, we should remember that the user right are not just for button programming. You will see this padlock in other places, which can be affected by the user right. A time profile can be used to control when a user right is active and automatically switch to another user right. This can be used to restrict phone buttons and dialing rules for after hours. Also pointed out on this diagram is where you would set the user rights item that is assigned to this user. User rights can be created in Manager and Web Manager. They can also be assigned to the user using both methods, the equivalent parameters and the screens, as we see here in Manager. In this video, you will see how to set up the soft programmable button for users with desk phones, so that they can have the feature they require at their fingertips. It will also demonstrate how to create and assign a user right as a template for button programming. This helps assign the same soft key features to several users more effectively.
Okay, now I'd like to show you how to customize the buttons on a user's handset.
Oh, great.
So let's go to our user that we created.
Okay.
Just going to click Edit. And you'll see here on button programming that we already have 3 appearance buttons. We're given these in default.
Nice.
Generally speaking, most users really only need 2 appearance buttons. So they can answer a call and they can transfer a call. If you remember, we reserved the last call appearance button, so no call can come in on the last call appearance button. So if I delete now the 3rd call appearance button, this user will only ever get 1 call at a time, which is more than most people can handle. But it also means I now have an amount of buttons that I can program. Now that amount of buttons will depend on the phone. If I select up here, I can choose the phone that this user has. So if I go down and choose a 1608, I can see I've got 8 programmable buttons. Other phones have more buttons you can program. It will also ask me if I want to add an expansion unit. Mostly this is only reserved for people on reception. So I know I've got 8 buttons to program. I've already used 2. So if I want to edit now and add a button, click on the pencil. Now the nice thing about it is we can put a label on it. Some phones have a digital label, some have a label that you have to write on manually. I think it's always a good idea to fill this in so you know what this button's doing as well.
So what are we doing here?
Well, I'm going to put a user on this one. So we're going to put Anthony Franco on here. He's more commonly known as Tony. Now the action data is what we're going to assign to this button. I said we're going to create a user button. So we click on user, say OK. Then offers me the user list. Nice and easy, don't you have to remember his extension number. And we say OK.
Why would you have a user like that on a button?
Well, that will enable me to just press this button to call Tony. I can also use it to press this button to transfer a call to Tony if I wanted to. And if I've got lamp indication on my buttons, if he's on the phone, it will be a red steady light so I can see when he's busy on the phone. Another button that is quite useful to put on here and very popular would be a pickup button. This time I'm going to choose advanced. Now you'll notice when you open these folders that there are lots of folders inside them. There are so many features that you can assign to your buttons. It's untrue. And as well as assigning buttons from here and features, you can also assign shortcodes to a button if you wanted to. If you wanted a specific shortcode assigning to take you maybe somewhere on the Voicemail Pro. Go under call now. And I'm going to scroll down and there I find pickup group. Click OK. And he wants to be able to pick up calls for the sales group. I could make up other groups if I wanted to, especially for pickup, but we'll just use the ones that we've got there at the moment. Another really popular button, although there is a shortcode that you can use for it, is something called Do Not Disturb. The action data, again, I'm going to go to Advanced, and I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to find Do Not Disturb. Now, this is a bit of an odd one. I'm just going to use Do Not Disturb on. Click OK. Click OK again.
Do we have to set up another one for Do Not Disturb off?
No, we don't.
Oh.
This is a toggle option, so we only ever have to put the Do Not Disturb on. And just by pressing it, it will put the Do Not Disturb button on. The user will get an N in their screen, indicating no calls. And to take it off, you press the same button again. Now, when you're in Do Not Disturb, your calls will go automatic to your voicemail.
I see.
As long as you've got your voicemail turned on. If you don't have your voicemail turned on, then the caller will just get an unobtainable tone. So I've used 5 of my buttons. Quite happy about that. And that's all I want. Now you may have certain buttons that you want to assign to all users.
How do you set that up?
To do that, we'd have to use user rights.
Oh, and where do you find those?
It's like making up a template, really. If I go to System Settings and scroll down and keep scrolling down, it's kind of hidden at the bottom. These are some of the default templates that I already have. So I'm going to look at this sales group one, the newly created one. And when I look in here, you'll see that there's lots of settings other than button programming that we can use.
Okay.
You've got the user. You could apply a shortcode. You can program buttons. Here you see the buttons that this template already has. You've got telephony options. User right membership, showing you which users are using this template. And I can also add people in here as well. voicemail, and forwarding options. Any of these you can set on this template, and then we can assign this template user right to a user. So this is the sales group one. The button programming is done exactly the same way. So I can add another button if I wish to. So for example, I might even add the call listen for somebody who wants to be able to listen in to other people's calls. Click OK. So there we go. We've got call listen. So as I mentioned earlier, I could apply the user right by ticking a user here. But if I want to apply them to ePerry, for example, I can see that they don't use this user right. Just going to update what I've done. And I'm going to go back to user. And would you mind finding ePerry for me, please? So let's go into ePerry and assign this user right.
Okay.
So scroll down on the first screen in the user form, and we see here user rights. We're going to apply a user right for working hours. Now those working hours could be determined by a time profile if you wanted.
Are we going to talk about that too?
We're going to talk about time profiles shortly.
Okay.
We haven't got one at the moment, or we're not using one, but I want to put a user right against it. And I'll put one on the night service, just in case we do put a time profile on later. You could have them different if you wanted to, so you could put more restrictions on at night. So if I now check the button programming,
Oh, look at that.
it has our template on there.
Yeah.
What you will notice now is that you can't edit any of these.
Oh, why is that?
Well, it's because they're assigned to the template. So any changes you want to make for any of these buttons would have to be made on that template. And that would change it for all users that are assigned to that template.
That makes sense now.
It does make sense, but please make sure that they're buttons that you won't want to change too often.
Okay.
And if you leave them some free that you can manually program, you've given them plenty of flexibility. So I'm just going to update that. Now, one thing to mention about the user rights, something that does catch people out quite a lot, and sometimes when they don't work. If we look back in this user rights again,
Okay.
and on the button programming,
Yeah.
you see at the top here, it says yes, apply user right value. If this was no, then it wouldn't apply any of these buttons at all to this user right. So sometimes people will fill in buttons here, go and apply it to a user, and they still don't see them. Make sure that you have applied that particular feature to the right. Same within voicemail. You can see
Yeah.
it's yes,
Okay.
but it says no here because we haven't applied it, so it's still free. If I applied yes to this, then you'd never be able to turn this voicemail off.
Oh.
So just be very careful about how you use your user rights and what's turned on and what's turned off.
Okay.
Generally speaking, just use it for button programming. It's just a quick way of allocating a lot of buttons to a lot of users.
Topics covered in this learning object include: understand how to use the manager to configure user rights for groups of users. At the end of this learning object, you should be able to identify the features and functionality of the Avaya Equinox client for IP Office. Avaya Equinox is our latest softphone, so we thought you might like to see it. It's available from IP Office version 11 software onwards and will replace the Avaya Communicator, which you may already use. The Equinox client will register as a SIP softphone, audio plus video calling to the IP office server, and will receive SIP telephony features from the same. It will be supported as a softphone only in Release 11 and upwards. At this time, there is no support for shared mode control of associated IP office desk phone. Avaya Equinox will enable users to make and receive audio calls. It will display caller ID and call information. If desired, a call can be muted or be put on hold automatically whilst handling a previous call. In addition, it will also transfer calls, attended and unattended, and forward calls. It will also allow conferencing, for example, IP Office Ad Hoc and Meet Me without moderator controls. A message waiting indication, MWI, will be offered, and it will also allow video calls. Settings will be provided to the Equinox client on registering. User extension number and password, similar to how it is done with an IP handset. Simultaneous mode will be supported as per existing IP Office clients, so desk phone plus any one desktop plus any one mobile plus any one web RTC client. The Equinox client will not have feature keys or labels, so features not displayed on the screen will be accessed by shortcodes. Avaya Equinox client seen here is the same Equinox client already available on Aura. It will be a common client across Aura and IP Office. The capabilities available will depend on the platform it is registered to. In this phase, Equinox will be available in 3 versions: Equinox for Windows, for iOS or Android smartphones, and for the latest Mac operating systems. It supports the basic telephony functionalities, provisioning the client, including IP Office telephony and features. Licensing for the Equinox client will be as per existing IP Office clients, which means that the power user licenses will be needed for the mobile client while the desktop needs Office Worker, Power User, or Teleworker licenses. Equinox is planned to support resiliency, presence, IP Office directory, also Zang integration, and instant messaging, IM. The top-of-mind home screen, as seen here, provides a quick view of upcoming calendar events and an easy way to join conference calls. The Avaya Equinox client loads local contacts from the device as well as the user's IP Office personal directory contacts and merges both. Specifically, any contacts with a common email ID will be merged. The user also has the option to search contacts more widely on the IP Office in terms of system contacts, hunt groups, etc. The user's own avatar or icon is available in Release 11 software via Zang Spaces. Similarly, other user avatars are also visible under Messages, as that is again via Zang Spaces. Local contacts from the device will include an avatar, if available, for the local contact. Personal directory, system directory contacts from the IP Office will not include an avatar, unless sharing a common email ID with a local contact with avatar, as the IP Office core platform does not support avatars at this time. Instant messaging has a dependency on Zang Spaces in the cloud and requires one free Zang Spaces basic account for each Equinox user. Presence for the Equinox client is driven from the IPO core platform rather than the 1X portal as per existing clients. Presence states supported will be available, busy, away, offline, do not disturb. Automatic presence will not be possible in Release 11 software, i.e., no timed inactivity for away status, no automatic out-of-office status, as there is no server-side integration with Exchange at present. Users will be able to change presence state. This will not persist across logout. Changing presence on one Equinox client will update on another logged-in Equinox client, for example, Equinox Desktop and Mobile. Users will be able to add a presence status note. This will persist across client logout, but will only be visible when the client is actually logged in. It will be possible to sync Do Not Disturb presence status on the client with telephony DND on the IP Office configurable. Telephony presence. IP Office core server will also manage the telephony presence for the Equinox client to indicate when the user is on a call. Presence of Equinox contacts will be displayed when the contact is visible. For example, in search results, messages window, etc. Equinox Client Presence will also be available to the user in a CPE-only environment, as well as in cloud hybrid deployment. Note that Equinox Client uses Zang Spaces for messaging and IPO core platform for presence. Existing IPO clients, for example, Avaya Communicator Windows, use 1X Portal for both messaging and presence. This does mean there is no federation interworking of messaging and presence between newer Equinox clients and the existing clients. Call history is local call history, i.e. specific to the user's device. It is not a centralized IPO call log. At the bottom of the Equinox client, there are some launchpads to the cloud. Zang Spaces Dashboard, referenced already for messaging. Equinox Meetings Online, as visible to the left of the client above. This is an optional subscription-based service for multi-party UC. There is click-to-call capability available through Outlook and browsers. In terms of cloud dependencies for Equinox clients in Release 11, for a CPE customer, Equinox Client registers to local IPO server as a standard SIP softphone, audio and video. Equinox Client gets presence from that same local IPO server. For messaging, Equinox Client uses free Zang Spaces in the cloud. Each Equinox Client user has his or her own Zang Spaces basic account for messaging. For multi-party UC, Equinox Client uses optional subscription-based Equinox Meetings Online in the cloud. Here you can see the Avaya Equinox home screen. Once the application completes registration, this screen will appear with the options Top of Mind, Contacts, Favorites, History, and Calendar. Zang Spaces is part of the Avaya family. Zang Spaces is an Avaya-hosted, cloud-based collaboration tool. Free Zang Spaces basic account is used for each Equinox client user in IPO Release 11. The Avaya Equinox client shows the calendar entries under the Calendar tab, which are fetched from the Exchange server. However, the native calendar application is part of the Equinox client and will connect to a native calendar for local events. To see the calendar entries on the home screen, select the Calendar tab. On the top, select My Meetings dropdown and check the calendars you want to add. Common Outlook plugin for Avaya Equinox Meetings Online and Zang Spaces. Invite participants with meeting details, supports Click to Join Host from Outlook and Top of Mind Meetings widget. Is compatible with Webmail, Outlook Web Access for Microsoft Exchange 2013 and higher, and Office 365. Okay, so let's take a look at how we can create a user who will use the Equinox client to manage their calls. Please pay particular attention to the screens and settings which need to be checked and set up for the Equinox users.
What is this Avaya Equinox icon here on the desktop?
Click on it. Let's open it up and have a look. The Avaya Equinox client is an application that you can run on your laptop or on your PC, and it acts as your telephone. Here you go, it's opened up. First thing you'll notice is you get a tutorial with it, which might be quite useful to do when you use it for the first time. Just very briefly, you can see around the screen, you get presence with the client. You can put your own avatar, your own picture in there if you wish to, and your presence can be set as to whether you're busy, away, do not disturb. You can also see the presence of other users. You see it in the bottom half of the screen, so you can see who's available quite quickly. Also offers you to browse through your contacts, messages, look at any meetings. You can also link it to your Outlook. It allows you to manage your audio and video devices as well. Would you like to see how we set one up?
Can we set one up for me?
We have to go into Web Manager to set it up because there's certain settings that apply only to the Equinox client. So let's go to Web Manager. First thing to check, and you should only ever have to check this because it should be set up on installation if you're using Avaya Equinox. System. Now I know we looked at the system menu earlier. This was part we didn't cover. I'm going to go to LAN 1. And we need to go to the VoIP setting. What we need to check here is that SIP registration is enabled, as you see it is. And also the SIP domain name is correct for your domain.
Anything else?
Just move slightly further down and we check that TLS is yes and that we're using port 5061.
Right. Do I need to write this down?
No, this should all be done for you. Okay, but it's just nice to know what the Avaya Equinox relies on to work.
Okay. What about the SIP domain name? Should I be writing that down?
Yeah, it's always useful to write down the SIP domain name. Now we need to create you as a user.
Oh, can I do that?
You sure can.
I will remember to select the machine that it has to be added on. I'll put my name in.
Good, you're using the format we've used all the way through.
Oh, yes.
Always makes it easier. Now you must remember to put a password in here.
Okay.
And please write this password down. We're going to need it to be able to log on to the Equinox client.
What about extension? What should I put in the extension field?
Well, let's take the next extension in the range. That's 1112. So make sure you're a power user.
Anything else?
Nothing for the Equinox client. You could always go and check the voicemail, but by default it should be turned on anyway. Yes, there it is. It's turned on.
Should I put a voicemail code in?
It's always useful.
Anything else?
There's one thing we have forgotten to do.
Oh, what's
Can you
that?
go back to user?
Okay.
And you see where it says the login code?
Yeah.
We need to put a login code there.
Ah, I
So
see.
can you put our login code in, please?
Okay. Will we use this login code for the Equinox client?
No, we use the password.
Oh, I see.
Let's hit create.
Oh, select extension. What should I select?
Because it's an Equinox client, we're going to have to select a SIP extension.
And the
So-
password?
You need to put the same password in again.
Ah, the one for the user?
Yes.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. It's also created an extension. If you just go to the extension form for me, you'll see we have an extension there as well.
Oh, nice.
Previously, we selected none.
And in this case, it made one.
Let's click on the Equinox client icon and configure.
Okay.
Okay, so we get the tutorial again.
Mm-hmm.
You can either do it or you can skip it at this point
Okay.
and do it later. Okay, we've got the login screen for Equinox, but we need to set one more thing up. Just check that it's done. Can you go to the settings cog at the top? Manually configure expert mode. Go to services. Go to phone service. And in here, we see our server address, but we need to make sure the domain name is in there. If you could type avaya.com for me and click done. Bear in mind, now you've done that, you shouldn't have to do it again. So let's put our extension in and pop the password in. Click next. Okay, now put our username in and pop your password in again. Ta-da! You've got an Equinox client.
Topics covered in this learning object include: identify the features and functionality of the Avaya Equinox client for IP Office. After completing this learning object, you will be able to identify web management for end-user self-administration. Users now have access to a cut-down version of web management to administer some of their own user settings, giving them the ability to make changes to their own user profile, such as forwarding, personal directory, and button programming. The IP Office Administrator controls which users have access to self-administration using settings in the User Configuration tab in Manager. Here, Users are given access to the different features they can either view or control, depending what the administrator allocates them. Self-administration is available in Server Edition and IPOffice Standard Edition modes. By default, under the User menu, Self-Administrator is set to No. When it's turned to Yes, you can then select which items the user can read or write to, or you can deny them access to either, on a feature-by-feature basis. There are two ways to access end-user self-administration. The URLs are shown on the screen. ID http:// IP address is entered. Then the user can select the self-administration screen from the menu they are offered. A user needs to enter their username and password. This must be the same username and password as defined in the IPOffice configuration. If self-administration has not been configured for the user or they enter the wrong username or password, they will see the error message as shown here. Once the user logs in, they will be able to configure the settings that the administrator has given them access to. Please be aware that if the user changes their passwords and then forgets it, as the administrator, you will have to reset it, as it is not possible for you to see their password. It's also good practice to keep username and passwords in a uniformed manner, so as to make searching in the directory easier. For example, if you allow user to change their names, the directory can soon become messy and disorganized, making it hard to find user in the directory. Moreover, it will also affect how you search for users in Manager and Web Manager. In this video, you will see how to log on to and navigate around self-administration. It is available to all users, but only at the discretion of the administrator, who can also decide what the user is allowed to manage for themselves.
Is there anything that users can administer or configure themselves?
It's called Web Management for Self-Administration.
Where do you do that?
First of all, you have to make sure the user actually has it. Go to our user form and let's give it to you. And what you'll see, if you slide down the side here, we have something called Web Self-Administration. First of all, we need to enable Web Self-Administration. In default, it's set to No. You can also control exactly what they can do with their self-administration for different options by using the drop-down here. Everything except user is set to no access, so the users can change their passwords. If you don't want them to be able to change their passwords, you could stop them. Personally, I would give them access to go into button programming, do not disturb so they can change their exception numbers and their personal directory, just for a starter. Now they can change their personal directory actually on their handset, but they might find it easier to do it using self-administration.
Okay. What is that down there?
The Media Manager is Avaya's recording package. If I was to turn it on, it would mean that the user would be able to listen to their own recorded calls.
I see.
But you would have to have installed and purchased Media Manager. Okay, let's update that user.
How do you access the web self-administration?
Okay, let's open another tab up here. We did see it in an earlier video. Could you put the IP address in of the IPOffice for me, please? Can you see here, it says IPOffice self-administration. So you could give this link to your users. If you notice at the top, you could give them the link 7070 Web Management Self-Administration. Now you need to put your name in and your password.
Which one?
You need the password that you entered just below the name. So the one you used to log on to the Equinox client and OneX portal. Log in. They need to scroll down and accept and click OK. And here we see what they can change. So if we wanted to, you could change your name, your login code. They can change their passwords. They can put in an exception number for their Do Not Disturb if they wish to.
What's an exception code?
Well, if they've got Do Not Disturb on,
Yeah.
they can put a list of telephone numbers in here of people that can call them whilst they're on Do Not Disturb. So it's kind of giving certain people an override. The personal directory. Now, you can add individually or you can import from a CSV file. If we just add one, you can give it a number, a name, and pop a telephone number in. Just click add, and it's in there. They'll be able to search under the name alphabetically on their handsets then. Button programming, as we've seen before, and it's configured very similarly to how we looked at it earlier, but there are only certain options that we will allow the user to put on there. It's great. It does put the onus on the users, but just be careful. They could get a bit carried away and you have some mess to clear up.
What does settings do?
Settings allows you to opt in and out of Google Analytics.
Oh, that's what we signed on to when we first entered the application.
It certainly is. It's allowing Google to collect information.
Makes sense now.
But you can turn it off if you want to.
Okay, good.
So if we save that, we're all done. Data has been saved successfully.
Topics covered in this learning object include identify web management for end-user self-administration, After completing this learning object, you will be able to understand how to use and configure groups for incoming calls, pickup overflow, and night service. Hunt groups are used for routing external and internal calls, grouping users for call pickup groups, group mailboxes, paging, and broadcasts. When creating a hunt group, you are essentially creating a group which can be used in many different ways. The conventional hunt group will do as it says. When the extension number of the group is dialed, then it will hunt around for any available user to answer the call. These groups are created in the same way, but may be assigned to a shortcode or a button on a telephone for the feature required. For example, you might create a group called Sales Pickup, containing the sales team, then assigning a pickup button to each user in the sales team so they only pick up the call of the members in this group. You might also create a group with no members at all. This group would be used only as a group mailbox. For example, a night service group with no members would send the caller straight to voicemail and be informed that the office is closed and the caller can leave a message, which could be picked up by certain users. These users would have to have a message waiting indication and access to the mailbox. This is done by entering H plus the hunt group name in the source number tab in the user forms. There are standard hunt groups, XMPP groups, and centralized group only for branch solution. When adding a new group in IP Office, you can define the group type with profile on group form. Standard hunt group. It's the default group type and the standard method for creating IP Office user groups. XMPP group. This group is used in Avaya 1X portal for IP Office. Extensible Messaging and Presence Protocol, XMPP, is a communications protocol for present status and instant messaging, IM, and this enables presence information and instant messaging within a defined group of XMPP-enabled Avaya 1X portal clients. Centralized group is only available in a branch solution and not for standard IP Office. This group also needs a unique name and extension number. The standard hunt group is a way for an organization to have people ready to handle certain kinds of calls. Typically, inbound calls are directed to specific hunt groups by a receptionist, an incoming call route, or an auto attendant that lets the caller select where to go. The hunt group is a collection of people who are ready to handle the kind of calls coming into their group. The object is about how the call will ring, who will it ring, and what the hunt group settings can do to handle various situations. It's very easy to add and remove users from the group. By clicking the appropriate buttons, a list of users will appear for you to include or exclude. The ring mode can be selected from the drop-down list. The user list shows what users are in the hunt group and whether they are enabled. They may be disabled by the administrator who wants the user list entry to stay but not have the phone ring. Perhaps the user is on vacation. How calls ring within this group depends on the ring mode. The mode sequential, as shown here, rings each phone one at a time until someone answers. It starts with the first person in the list of members. The rotary mode is the same, except it picks whichever person is next on the list rather than always starting at the beginning. Hence, it rotates the users and hunts through the users. The longest waiting mode sends the call to the member least recently used. The collective ring mode rings all the members at once. If all members are busy, not enabled, or do not answer, the call may be sent to an overflow group or to voicemail. Where the call is sent depends on the no answer timer shown in the upper right of the screenshot and the tabs overflow and voicemail. These will be explained in the next screens. At the bottom of the screen, we see some of the users in the group. If they do not have a check mark next or yes next to their name, then they have disabled themselves from the group and will not be rung. Enabling or disabling can be done by either the administrator in Manager or Web Manager or by the user, if they have the enable or disable hunt group action assigned to buttons on their handset. This action can be set to take the user out of all groups or individual groups depending on how the button is programmed. The no answer time determines how long the call rings before the system starts ringing the next member. This applies to the sequential ring mode, rotary ring modes, and longest waiting ring mode, where the phone rings each member in turn if it is not answered. The setting does not apply to the collective ring mode, where all phones ring at once. For all ring modes, the administrator is advised to have the call answered within 2 minutes or sooner, by coming out of the group and either being directed to voicemail or an overflow group. Any named hunt group can be specified as an overflow group. You cannot overflow to a single extension number or any other number, other than a group number. If you wanted to overflow to a single user, then you would have to create a group with only one user. As is shown in the red boxes here, the main hunt group is an overflow group for the accounts hunt group, and it will get the unanswered calls for accounts after they ring for 45 seconds. If all the enabled members are busy, a call coming into the group will overflow immediately. Administrators may turn on the queuing feature in order to let users wait in line rather than overflow when all agents are busy. Still, if an overflow timer has been set, even queued users will overflow when the overflowed timer expires. It is possible to add more than one group to the overflow in order for the calls to be offered to more groups if not answered. Just be careful that your overflow timer is not shorter than your voicemail timer, or the call will never be offered to the overflow groups. It will be answered by the voicemail instead. The voicemail answer time determines how long the call rings before it gets sent to voicemail, even if it goes to an overflow group. In an overflow condition, the IP Office system remembers the first hunt group settings, including the voicemail answer time. And if the overflow group does not pick up an overflow call, it will go to voicemail per the voicemail answer timer of the original hunt group that was called. Note, the voicemail answer timer should be longer than the overflow timer. The voicemail code controls the hunt group settings for voicemail access, allowing people with the voicemail security code to make outgoing greetings and retrieve the hunt group's voicemails. The voicemail help checkbox gives users prompts to guide them through usage of the system. The broadcast checkbox will forward all messages to all hunt group members. UMS Web Services allows licensed users to get voicemails via the web or email. It is important to note that to access the hunt group voice mailbox to make greetings and get voicemail messages, a user has to access the voicemail system using a shortcode created for the group mailbox and enter the voicemail security code. This shortcode is covered in another learning object. If users have a message button on their telephone, they can also use this to retrieve messages left in the mailbox, but they cannot record any greeting for the mailbox using this button. In order for a user to get a message waiting light for the Hunt group's messages, the administrator must add the Hunt group's extension to the user's source numbers. The Fallback tab has specific settings for out-of-service and night-service fallback groups that can be controlled by time profiles. The fallback can be entered here to cover calls when a Hunt group is out of service or when a night time profile is used to trigger the night service condition. A fallback and a night service destination can be a group, a user, or a short code pointing to an external number if required. This is possible with IPOffice 9.1 or above. Prior to this, you can only fall back to another Hunt group. Click on the drop-down for the out-of-service or night service and you will be offered existing users and groups. Alternatively, you can type in the destination of your choice, including outside numbers. Note that this tab is where you can manually put a Hunt group in service, out of service, or in night service. The Queuing tab controls the Hunt group settings for allowing callers to wait for a member of the group to become free and answer the call. The queue length is the amount of users that the system will hold in the queue. Incoming calls exceeding this limit will go to voicemail or an overflow group. Calls in queue alarm can be used to send an alert to an analog specified extension with a loud ringer when the number of calls queued for the Hunt group reaches the specified threshold. This device should not be used for making or receiving calls. The Announcements tab controls what will be displayed and when to the users on hold waiting for the Hunt group. Typically, organizations use this tab to handle callers in queue during times of heavy call volumes when all agents are busy. The user experience goes something like this. Inbound callers will hear ringing for several seconds, then hear the first announcement, such as, "Agents are busy, please hold on." Then the caller hears post-announcement music and may continue to wait for someone to answer. After several seconds, another announcement may be played, such as, "We value your call, please continue to wait." The waiting caller will hear music again, and the second message will repeat after several more seconds. At some point, the voicemail timer will expire, and the caller may leave a message. All of the timing, the announcements, and the sounds played while on hold are settable by an administrator. Making the announcements involves creating recordings with a telephone set, following the prompts given by the system. The process is slightly different between Embedded Voicemail and Voicemail Pro. The Voice Recording tab controls the settings for recording telephone calls when using Voicemail Pro. Note that if the voicemail type in the System tab is not set to Voicemail Pro, this tab will be grayed out. The selections here are self-explanatory, except to say that the recording auto selection tells the system where to put the recordings. They may go into a user mailbox or Hunt group mailbox or into a voice recording library. The VRL is part of Contact Store, an optional licensed application. The XMPP group is used in Avaya 1X portal for IPOffice. Extensible Messaging and Presence Protocol, XMPP, is a communications protocol for presence status and instant messaging, IM. Select XMPP group to enable presence information and instant messaging within a defined group of XMPP-enabled Avaya 1X portal clients. Two users can see each other's presence and exchange instant messages only if they are members of the same XMPP group. A user can be a member of 0 or more groups. A user that is not a member of any group is automatically added to the default system XMPP group. As a result, if no XMPP groups are defined, then all users are in the system XMPP group. If a user is a member of a very large XMPP group, a large amount of network traffic can be generated. This can be problematic for mobile users. Now let's take a look at how to create a Hunt group which could be used for answering an incoming call, a pickup group, and also a group which could be used to collect messages left out for hours.
Can you show me how to create a hunt group for group pickup?
Certainly can. We can look at groups for pickup and for call ringing. Go to call management and click on group. You see we already have some in there.
Yeah.
But we want to set up our own pickup group.
Yes.
So we'll add a group. Okay, so we'll give it a name. Something as simple as pickup group works quite well. But if you were making it for a certain department, you might want to include the department name on there. Each hunt group requires an extension number. We're going to put in the extension 1153 because this carries on from the range that we saw earlier. Now when you set up a group, you don't just set it up as a pickup group. You can set it up and it can be a hunt group as well and a broadcast group. It all depends on what users you put in there and what you want it to do. If it's just a pickup group and you're not going to ring it, then you don't need to worry about the ring mode. But if it was going to be a group that you were going to point an incoming call route at or a DDI number at, then you might want to select how you'd like it to ring.
What would be the best way to set it up?
If you want all phones to ring in the group when a call comes in, you'd choose collective. Or you could choose collective with a call waiting, so they're all ringing, but you can also have a call waiting. Longest wait's quite a popular one because it goes to the person that's had their handset down the longest in the group, and it will ring them for 15 seconds before it goes to the next person in the group. Rotary means that the call will come in and it'll go to one of the people in the group, and then it will hunt around the group. But it will change the first person it goes to every time. Unlike sequential, that will always go to the first person in the group that you state and will go through the order that you put the people in the group. It just depends how you want to work. So we'll keep this as sequential because it's pickup group, we're not going to ring it. Okay, we can see down here we have no membership. So we're going to add some users. I'm going to put everybody in there. And then this pickup group can be for everybody. Now if you see at the bottom, if we just click, it'll give us the OK option. And that adds them all in.
Nice and easy.
Again, if you wanted to remove anybody, you can just click on remove and it will come up with the same options and you can take out whoever you want. Or you could delete them this way. Okay, so we have our group made up for pickup. Remember, when you create a button for button programming, this will then be given as an option as one of the groups you can assign to a user's button. Hit create and our pickup group exists.
How do we address night service now? Do we create another hunt group for that? Can we do that?
We can, yes, we can create a night service group. Now, when you create a night service group, it's a little bit different and a little bit unusual. So I'm going to add a group here. Say which system we're adding it to. We need to give it an extension number, which will be 1154 following on.
Mm-hmm. The ring mode?
The ring mode we would not use here because it's going to be a little bit different in the respect that I'm not going to add any users into it. Reason being is I'm going to make this the night service mailbox. So I'm just creating a group because if you remember, when you create a user or a group, a mailbox is automatically created.
Yes.
If I look down here, voicemail is on and the timer is 45 seconds. So we'll ring at this group, even though there's no users in it, for 45 seconds before it goes to voicemail. That might be a little bit too long for a night service. So let's just give it 5 seconds. Okay, that is all we need to do to create a night service mailbox.
That's easy.
It is easy, but where would we assign it? Let's say, for example, you want to create the night service for the sales group. Then we would need to look at fallback. Because in here, we can assign the destination for night service, and it can be a user or it could be our night service group.
Topics covered in this learning object include understand how to use and configure groups, After completing this learning object, you will be able to summarize the use of the time profiles in the IP Office, understand the use of automatic night service using time profiles. Time profiles are created usually for the use of night service, so as to route calls to a different destination at different times of the day-night. This can be done either in the Incoming Call Route tab or the Group tab. The time profiles can also be used in the User tab so that different user rights can be used at different times. This allows, for example, after-hours call barring on extensions in night service. Another tab that can use time profiles is the ARS tab. This is sometimes used to redirect outgoing calls to another line provider at different times of day, giving least cost routing by time of day if required. You can also create time profiles in Web Management, but at present, you can't add any holiday times. So for flexibility, we're going to use Manager. Once a time profile is created in Manager or Web Management, they can be used where directed. Time profiles can be created by right-clicking Time Profiles in the menu tree and selecting New. Usually, a minimum of 2 time profiles should be created, one for business hours and one for non-business hours. Time profiles are commonly used in configuring hunt groups, incoming call routes, user rights, and call recording. Time entries cannot span a 24-hour time period. They can be up to 23 hours and 59 minutes. Times should start at 12 a.m. and go to 11:59 p.m. so as not to have conflicting time periods. Additional entries can be used if multiple time spans are used. What you see here is someone finishing the night service time profile for weekend days. To define daily out-of-hours service during the week, you begin by setting a start time such as 6 p.m. and an end time of 1 minute before midnight. Then you assign this out-of-hours condition to each weekday by clicking the Monday through Friday checkboxes. You also have to enter midnight to 8:59 a.m. as an out-of-hours condition and assign that to weekdays as well. For weekend days, only one entry is needed to cover each day and night, as is highlighted here. Time profiles can also include calendar entries to include specific dates in the profile. Here we see the administrator is using the 24-hour clock versus the AM/PM way to show time. Notice that the calendar profile is highlighted, where you would select a day such as Christmas to have night service. The start time is midnight, shown as 00:00 rather than 12 p.m., and the end time is 1 minute before the next day starts. Notice that this IP Office has night and weekend time profiles defined. Sometimes it is necessary to override a time profile manually. There are 4 settings for the way you wish to override the time profile. This is done with a shortcode, which can then be assigned to a button on the user's handset for a particular time profile. This feature is supported with IP Office 9.1 and above. The button indicator on a handset will show the time profile state, and pressing the button will present a menu with 5 options and an indication of the current state. The menu options are Timed Operation, No Override. The time profile operates as configured and works normally using the time profile. Latch Active. Select to activate the time profile. This activates the time profile until you set it back to timed operation, indicated by the solid red line. Latch Inactive. Select to deactivate the time profile. This deactivates the time profile until you set it back to timed operation, indicated by the dotted red line. Active until next timed inactive. Used for time profiles with multiple intervals. Select to make the time profile active until the next inactive interval, indicated by the dotted red line. Inactive until next timed active. Used for time profiles with multiple intervals. Select to make the time profile inactive until the next active interval, indicated by the solid red line. These two options are very useful if the customer wants to activate or deactivate the night service's routing. Say, for example, they want to close early for a special occasion, but don't want to change the night service routing for the rest of the year. With the exception of emergency 911 calls, time profiles can control when users can use their phone. Most long-distance toll fraud occurs after hours and can be minimized with out-of-hours time profile. This means you would have a user right for day service, allowing user to call nationally or globally, but after hours, you could use a different user right, which prohibits the user from dialing anything but emergency calls. Time profiles can control when certain destinations are active in an incoming call route. For example, a company in the East that is closed for the evening could have a time profile applied to their incoming call route to automatically send calls to their Western branch office that may still be open, giving the company extended operating hours and being able to service customers for many more hours in a day. Time profiles can also control when call recording is active. So we have looked at how to create a night service hunt group and also a time profile of your working hour and holidays. Now let's put them together and set up the night service feature to work automatically for you.
In regards to night service, do we have to set up time profiles first? And where do we do that?
Well, we can do it either in Manager or Web Manager.
Okay.
We do have to create time profiles if you want to run night service automatically.
Oh, I do. And where do we do that?
Okay, I'm going to go into Manager for this one.
All right.
I've opened Manager up, I've logged on,
Yeah.
and we see here we've got time profiles.
Yes.
So I'm going to click on there. We do already have one in there, but I want to add a new one. So we click on the folder and we add time profile. So in this one, would you mind typing for me night service?
Okay. Night service. There we are.
Perfect. I'm going to slide across here to this side. And now we need to put in the reoccurring patterns. So, what time do you open in the mornings?
9 a.m.
Okay, so I'm going to add something that's reoccurring, so that it happens every day. And at the moment it's given me 12 a.m. to 11:59 p.m. So we have to edit this slightly. So if you open at 9 a.m, then we need to set this one to be from 12 a.m. to 9 a.m. And I'm going to assume that that's Monday through Friday.
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect. So I'm going to take out Saturday and Sunday.
Okay.
Now we're going to need another one because that's just from midnight to the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So now we need to add in the evening time.
Right.
So we're going to add a recurring time again. And this time, what time do you close?
6 p.m.
And we'll go to 11:59 p.m.
Right.
So this one now joins up with the one we created before.
Right.
Again, we don't need Saturdays and Sundays. But I will add one for Saturdays and Sundays. So I just take out Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, And I'm going to leave it from midnight to midnight, so that we're saying the office is in night service between these times.
Right.
The other nice thing we can do is we can add a reoccurring date.
Right.
Don't know if you saw it a moment ago.
Yes.
And this can be used for bank holidays,
Right.
or Christmas holidays, those kind of things. It gives me a calendar.
So we could have added May 7th or May 28th, which are bank holidays.
Yeah. I'll add in May 28th.
Right.
So you just double click on it and it will turn green. And I can say OK there. Now when I look in the left-hand pane, you'll see that it has everything in there. So you can see at a glance whether you've got the times and the dates correctly in here.
Right. Very nice. And this is all still in the same night service time profile.
It certainly is. And we can also create the time profile in Web Manager, but I thought it would just be nice to see it in here as well.
Okay.
So, where do we put this time profile for our night service? We need to go to our groups now.
But we have to save this, right? Or you're going to...
No, I'm going to do it all in one go, and then I'm going to save it at the end.
Right.
So let's just, for example, say for the sales group,
okay,
we're going to put a fallback in. And the night service is going to be to go to our night service. And our time profile is the one we've just created.
Right.
And it says here, it's controlled by a time profile.
Cool.
If it was out of service, everybody'd logged out, it would go to the pickup group.
Right.
Okay. Now remember, with Manager, just by clicking OK, doesn't update it, doesn't save it.
No, we have to save it.
We do. We have to go back up to the configuration file here.
Yeah.
We have an error. Let's go check what that error is. The pickup group that we created, the code does not meet the requirements. It's because we didn't set voicemail up for that pickup group. We've got no need to.
Yeah.
So let's go do it.
Okay.
Just to be on the safe side, so we can get rid of those errors. Would you mind putting me our code in there, please?
Sure.
See, our error's already gone.
Yeah.
We do have a warning, but
regarding incoming group ID, be looking at that, right?
We'll be looking at that shortly, yes.
Right, cool.
Okay, now let's try and save that configuration again. We can merge it.
These are mergeable items?
Yeah, most things in Manager are mergeable. Okay, let's put our password in. Click OK again. You can watch the progress, and then that will be sent in. And that night service is now set up.
Excellent. Where do we go next?
Okay, next we're going to go and look at system directory. But let's do a little bit of theory first.
Cool.
Topics covered in this learning object include: summarize the use of the time profiles in the IP office, understand the use of automatic night service using time profiles. After completing this learning object, you will be able to add, delete, and edit directory numbers, import and export the directory using CSV files. You may access the directory from the menu tree in Manager or under System Settings in the Web Management as shown here. The directory for the IP office allows you to add commonly used numbers, which can then be used by all users from their telephones or from clients such as Windows Communicator. The number of entries is dependent on the size of your configuration, which in most cases can easily accommodate 1,500 to 2,000 entries. The directory in the IP office is very easy to add to and edit. It can be used by all users on the system. If using a handset, they will find a directory button, where they will find both the personal directory and the system directory. Once selected, you may add a new directory number. You will see the list of your entries in alphabetical order. It is possible to edit existing entries by clicking on the pencil icon associated with the entry or delete it by clicking on the trash bin icon. To add a new entry, click the Add Directory entry at the top right of the screen. You will then be able to add an index number to your entry, along with the name and telephone number. The telephone number can be internal or external. For external numbers, please remember to add any country or area codes. And if you dial a digit for outside dialing, that is 9 for an outside line, this should also be added. Then click Create to add the number to your directory. You can now see your newly added number in the directory. When a call comes in from this number, the matching name you have in the directory will appear to the called user on their handset display, softphone, or Avaya client to easily identify the caller and answer the call appropriately. The same principle applies to any number which a user enters into their own personal directory on their phone or the Avaya client in their PC or smartphone, similar to working of the phone book on a cell phone. And of course, if there is no number displayed by the caller, no name will be displayed. It is also useful to note that users cannot make or edit system directory entries. They will have to ask the administrator to make any changes required. If you wish to, you can import or export the directory using Manager. It creates and reads CSV files. In Manager, go to File, then Import Export, and then select which option you want. To export, for example, choose where you want the file to be saved to, such as the desktop of your PC, and click OK. Note, when importing the directory, it will import the whole CSV file, so please make sure you remove any duplicate entries before you import it, or you will have double entries for some numbers. In this video, you will see how to navigate and create system directory entries.
I was wondering, where do we set system speed dial?
Okay, it's not called System Speed Dial with IP Office.
Oh, what is it called?
It's referred to as the directory. And the directory can be used by all users. It's a central directory that you can put all your telephone numbers in that are regularly used by everybody.
Okay.
People have their own personal one as well, but this one is available to all users.
Okay, so I take it we're going to Web Manager.
Yeah, so let's log on. It's a really nice, easy feature to set up.
Okay.
You'll find it under System Settings, System Directory.
Right.
We have nothing in there at the moment, but if we want to add something, add a directory entry. You can give them an index number if you want to, or it will automatically give it to them themselves.
So this is like for our home office
Yeah,
or other sites?
other sites, suppliers, you know, the takeaway down the road.
That's a good one, the Chinese.
So enter a name and then enter the number. Something to remember here. If you dial 9 for an outside line, you must remember to put the 9 in at the beginning of the number. We don't, so it doesn't matter so much, but some sites do.
Makes sense.
So we can save that here. That will now be displayed on everybody's handset, and they can search for the name supplier.
Right.
Okay, so if we want to add another one, you can see the index, it counts up for you.
Right. That was nice and easy. Now, how about if I want to put in a whole bunch of numbers?
Okay, it's possible to import a CSV file with all your numbers in.
Oh, cool. Can you show me how to do that?
I can show you how to do it, but it can't be done on Web Manager. We have to go to Manager. What you'll find under File in Manager is an Import-Export option.
Right.
So as long as you've got the CSV file somewhere on your PC or on your network, you can click Import, say you want the directory, and click OK. It will then import all the names and numbers that you have on there.
Excellent. That was nice and easy and straightforward. Do we now have to save the configuration again?
It's Manager, of course we have to.
Right.
One thing to be careful when you do an import of the directory is it doesn't look for duplicate entries. Okay, it's not going to search for that. So you have to make sure that what you're putting in isn't already in there. So that's nice and easy. It's done. Let's go and look at how we treat our DDI numbers and bring them into the system.
Which one will we be using, Manager or Web Manager?
We'll be using Web Manager. But let's go and have a look at how the lines are set up and some of the configuration on it first. So we need to go back to the theory.
Right.
Topics covered in this learning object include add, delete, and edit directory numbers, import and export the directory using CSV files. After completing this learning object, you will be able to summarize the various lines the IP office can utilize, define what the incoming and outgoing group IDs are used to control, explain how the system numbers its physical line connections, understand how Manager is used to configure and customize lines within the system. The line settings shown in the system configuration will change according to the types of trunk cards installed in the control unit or added using external expansion modules. The trunk type affects how the system routes calls received on that trunk and the routing of calls to the trunk. The various line types can be selected and configured by first clicking on Line in the navigation pane and then selecting an item within the group of lines presented. Shown here are analog lines, BRI, PRI digital lines, and SIP trunks. Most line configuration is done on installation and rarely needs to be changed, but it's good that you understand what line types you have and how many you have. If you require more lines, then this would be done with your maintainer, and the additional lines would be installed by them. Each of the physical port in the system gets a unique line number. The system gives a line number to each of the various physical ports in order to keep track of them. Line numbering happens whenever a line module, such as an analog or a BRI trunk card, is added to the system. It also happens each time the box is defaulted back to factory settings. On a side note, a very similar process happens with analog or digital phone ports. Analog lines are known by the physical ports they plug into, so you have to keep track of which line is plugged into each port. Digital lines also have a physical port that gets a line number and has a configuration form to fill out. However, these lines also have multiple channels inside them, and the system keeps track of each channel inside the line. These channels are configurable in a subtab. Europe and other areas of the world use E1, which has 30 channels available per line and has PRI services. It has different settings for the line than T1, but the channels and their settings are mostly the same as with T1 PRI, which has 24 lines and is mostly used in North America. The line shown here is a basic rate ISDN BRI line, also known as an SO, which is still popular in Europe. It is digital and has 2 channels within it that work well in the T1 E1 networks. Each channel can be used for voice or data calls, and each has a setting for group line ID. Each system trunk, or in some cases, individual trunk channels, can be configured with an incoming group ID and an outgoing group ID. These group IDs are used as follows: incoming call routes for incoming calls on external trunks. The incoming group ID of the trunk is one of the factors used to match the call to one of the configured incoming call routes. Routing outgoing calls for dialing, which matches a short code set to a dial feature. The short code's line group ID can indicate either an automatic route selection, or ARS form, or to use a trunk from a set to the same outgoing group ID. If the call is routed to an ARS form, the short codes in the ARS form will specify the trunks to use by matching outgoing group ID. IP Office supports SIP voice calls through the addition of SIP trunks to the system configuration. This approach allows users with non-SIP phones to make and receive SIP calls. Typically, a SIP trunk is required for each SIP ITSP being used, as the configuration provides methods for multiple URIs from that ITSP to use the same trunk. For each trunk, at least one SIP URI entry is required. There are up to 150 SIP URIs supported on the same trunk. Amongst other things, this sets the incoming and outgoing groups for call routing. Topics covered in this learning object include: summarize the various lines the IP Office can utilize, define what the incoming and outgoing group IDs are used to control, explain how the system numbers its physical line connections, understand how Manager is used to configure and customize lines within the system. After completing this learning object, you will be able to understand how to route incoming numbers to different destinations, such as users, hunt groups, and voicemail. The incoming call form is found under the System Settings drop-down menu. The route allows you to view all your incoming numbers and their destinations. They can be edited and deleted with the appropriate icons. Here, we can see the DDI/DID numbers which are being presented to the system and the destinations they are set to go to. A destination can be a user, a hunt group, a short code, voicemail, or an external number. You can pretty much send your incoming DDI/DID numbers to any target you wish. You do not have to route all your numbers to a destination, only the ones you want to use. Although it's a good idea to route all excess or unused numbers to the main group, just in case they are rung by mistake. You can sort this display by clicking on the header for each column, so you can view them in order of DDI/DID numbers, destinations, or systems. In addition, if you wish to only view the DDI/DID numbers on a certain system in your network, you can use the Configure Filter option. To add a new number, click on the Add Incoming Call Route button at the top right of the screen. When editing or creating a new incoming call route, you have a few options which can also be assigned to the number, the main one being the DDI/DID number you wish to route. You can then also set a priority to the number, 1 being the lowest and 3 being the highest. This allows you to ensure that if it is an important number to you and it is routed to the same destination as other numbers, it is presented in the priority you want. If you want a specific name to appear to the users when this number is presented to them, you can name it using the call tag. Recording can be invoked on the number. This can also have a time profile assigned to it, so the number is only recorded at times you want it to be recorded. Finally, there is the destination of the number. As mentioned on the previous slide, you can route your number to any one of the many different destinations. You can also apply time profiles so that the number is routed to different destinations at different times of the day. Click on the Add, Edit, or Delete icons to make changes. You can select a time profile from the drop-down menu if required. You will be offered all the created time profiles on your system. If you leave it at its default, it will always go to this destination. In the Destination field, by clicking the drop-down menu, you will be offered all users and hunt groups you have created. Just select one. If you want to route the call to a shortcode or external number, you can also type it in the destination box, allowing you to enter any destination you want. If you see a destination with capital VM and a colon followed by a name, then this number is routed to a start point of the same name in your Voicemail Pro. For example, VM, auto attendant could be routing the call to a menu in the Voicemail Pro. The fallback drop-down menu will offer you the same items as the destination drop-down. The fallback option allows you to select a second route for the call, in case the first one is not available. This would be used, for example, if the user is logged off and has no voicemail turned on. In this video, you will see how to configure your incoming call routes so as to route your DID/DDI number to specific destinations.
At this point, how do I get my DDI number to come to my personal extension?
Okay, we need to look at incoming call routes for that.
We're using Manager for this?
We're going to use Manager for this. It's just easier to see it on the screen. We already have one incoming call route in here, which looks like a main telephone number.
Yeah, that is our main number.
What you will notice, because it is SIP, you get the DDI number at then your SIP provider. Okay, so it does look a little bit strange when you look at it to start with. But we're really interested in the number at the front because that's what people will dial from the outside for you. If I look under Destination, I can see that it's going to the sales group. But in night service, you remember we set up our time profile, it's going to our night service mailbox.
Right, that makes sense.
Lovely. Okay, so we need to put in your DDI number to go to your extension. So we need to add your DDI number.
Right.
So I'm going to click to create a new record.
Okay.
Incoming call route.
Right. Which line group ID are we using?
We're going to use 17.
And why is that?
Because line group 17 is what's supporting our SIP channel.
Ah, that makes sense now.
Just because I'm a little bit sneaky, I did copy the URL from the other incoming call route. So I'm just going to do a bit of a paste here, which puts in your main number. So all I need to do at the end here is change it to be your DDI number. So now I need to go to the destination and find your extension number. There we go, 1112. Okay, so now it's showing your DDI number coming to your extension.
Excellent.
And we can add in as many as we want to match to go wherever we want them to go.
Right.
One thing to understand about a destination, I'm just going to go back to your main number again, is these are going to groups, which is fine, and also they could go to voicemail here.
I see.
So it would go to the voicemail and people could then choose their extension numbers.
Right.
But other options we can put in here, you might see something like this. VM, and then a name. And this would be taking the call to a start point within the Voicemail Pro.
Oh, a call flow.
A call flow. It'll point it into a call flow to go to an auto attendant.
For an IVR system.
Yeah, okay. Exactly. We can also type in freehand if we want to. So if you wanted your main number to come to your mobile, I can do that as well.
Right.
But I'm not sure that's what you want to do.
No, not really.
Sure?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll send it back to the sales group then.
Yes.
Makes incoming call routes very flexible because you can point your telephone numbers to go wherever really you want them to go.
That is really easy. Where are we going next?
Let's go and have a look at how we back up our configurations and save all our changes.
Oh, that's an excellent idea. Don't want to lose all what we've done now.
Hang on, just a second. I better just clear this out so that these calls don't go to somewhere they shouldn't.
Right.
However, before we do anything else,
We have to save the configuration.
correct, we're in Manager, so you will have to save the configuration.
Yes.
I think you know how to do that now, though.
Oh, yes, I do.
Topics covered in this learning object include: understand how to route incoming numbers to different destinations. After completing this learning object, you will be able to explain IP Office Backup and Restore. It is important to have a secure backup policy before any failure happens. The administrator should be ready to restore service to the IP Office and the other applications as well. The backup function saves all current IP Office Server Edition configurations. The backup function for Server Edition covers these settings: Linux server settings, web management settings, configuration settings, security settings, DHCP allocations, call log. IP500 version 2 backups include the configuration, security, DHCP, and call logs. Server Edition has the option to back up Voicemail Pro, Avaya 1X Portal, and Call Reporter from the same backup process. With the IP500 version 2, you will need to back up the companion applications from their own clients. Select the server to back up, then select Backup. On this solution page, we see the list of servers in the solution. There is only one server to back up. To perform a backup, put a check mark next to the server to select it. Then click on either the Actions drop-down menu or the list symbol at right. Both have the backup option. Click on one of them and select the backup option. If the backup option is grayed out, then you have forgotten to put a check mark in the box of the server you had wished to back up. Here is the top of the backup screen where you define the items to back up. Shown here is just the top of the backup screen on the backup page. You may select the IP Office configuration and the other applications you would like to back up, including 1X Portal and Voicemail. You will find several options under each dropdown. Be sure to choose the one you want. If you want more than one of the options, you may need to take more than one backup. Give this backup a name that will help you when you need to find it amongst the mix of other backups. You will also be offered the option of which server you want to send the backup to. You may need to create the path to this server before you can select it. Also, you will be able to set a scheduled backup for a specific date and time. Shown here is the entire list of settable items in the backup page. The administrator can launch a single backup on demand or schedule the backup for later, and also schedule recurring backups. Here, the server WIP01 is backing up only the IP Office data and giving it the name Daily Backup. The backup will be saved on server WIP02 and is scheduled to start July 1st. It will do backups every day at 1:15 a.m. IP Office Server Edition keeps 14 backups and overwrites the oldest one as the weeks go by. These backups can be saved to the primary, secondary, and any application server if there is sufficient disk space. When transmitting the backup to a remote server, the server edition can use HTTP, HTTPS, FTP, SFTP, and SCP. Proxies are supported. To restore a backup file to a server edition, you select Restore instead of Backup in the Action tab. In the Restore window shown here, you identify the backup server. Click the Get Restore Points button, and then the process loads the backup list for you to select and use. A backup may be done during working hours, but a restoral will take the system down completely if it isn't out of service already. This is how to use Manager to start a backup on an IP Office 500 version 2. First, go to File and select Backup Restore. Click on Backup Binaries and Configurations to continue. On this backup page, we can select individual files to backup or choose all binary files and/or all configuration files using the checkboxes in the lower right. In the lower left, we see the backup folder in the Manager directory, which is the default location for backups. You may browse to another folder if desired. Clicking OK starts the backup. By default, IP Office performs a backup with every time you use the Save action after making a change to the configuration. This ensures that you always have the latest and greatest version of the configuration. There are automatic backups and on-demand backups. In this System tab, you can see that the automatic backup has been selected. The backups will occur every night between midnight and 12:30 a.m. There is no adjustment for this time, as it is a fixed time in the Manager. Here are more Manager backup details. Click on File and then on Preferences to get to this page. In the Security tab, we see the backup files on Send checkbox is marked, so there is a backup with each save. The backup file extension can be changed on this screen, and the quantity of saved backups is determined here. For your information, you can restore the backup data from one IP Office 500 version 2 to another. If either the IP address or the system ID, which is the LAN 1 MAC address, is the same, the licenses will not work unless you move the SD card with its licenses to the newly restored machine. In this video, you will see how to perform a backup using Web Manager.
Okay, I want to take you through the process of backing up your configuration.
Okay, cool. What about my messages and stuff?
We can back those up as well.
All right, can you show me?
Yeah, I sure can. We're going to use Web Manager to do this. And from the solution screen, which we see here, I'm going to select the IP Office that we're going to back up. And we only have one, but it could be a case that you have 2 or 3. So you can select them individually or all at once. Go to Action, you can choose Backup.
Right.
There is Restore there as well, you'll see. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is select what we want to back up. Your configuration. Now that's all your users, all your directory, all your groups, all those kind of things. Everything we've been working on.
Right.
You can back up 1X Portal if you wish to. And in the voicemail pro settings, we can select quite a few options. So we can back up the configuration.
Oh, and there's my messages and recordings. Okay.
Yeah. Or you can do a full one, which would be everything.
Right.
Okay, but we'll just do your messages and recordings for now.
Right.
We're not using WebLM or WebRTC, but again, they could be backed up also. Last but by no means least, you need to give it a label. So I would suggest that you call it backup.
Okay.
Perfect. It's going to slide down the screen a little bit there. Most importantly, we have to say where it's being backed up to. Now, I've already got a remote server set up, but you may need to get one set up.
Okay.
To do that, you can just add it, but we'll just use our test one for now.
Right.
Perfect. I'm going to set this to schedule it.
Right.
And when I do that, it's going to take out, the fact that you're going to have to come and do this every day or every week. Because we can set a date when it starts and set a time.
Right.
Let's do it in the morning. So turn the scheduler on and schedule it.
Right. Will it impact any calls coming into the system?
No, it won't impact anything. So if you need to do one here and now, we could do it as well. But I think it's much nicer to schedule it so that it's done every day, out of hours, so you've got everything.
Right. That's easy enough. Cool.
So, how do you feel about things so far?
You know, I think I'm ready. I'm ready to tackle it and get on with it.
Okay, well, it's been a pleasure spending this time with you.
Thank you. And you.
Topics covered in this learning object include explain IP Office backup and restore, After completing this learning object, you will be able to summarize the differences between Avaya Voicemail Pro and Embedded Voicemail. Use voicemail to set up user and group mailboxes, short codes and source numbers, and message waiting indication. Configure users to log into voicemail from their own extensions. Voicemail has become part of our regular working day now, so it is important that you select the correct voicemail for your needs and workload. It may be that you only need basic functionality such as mailbox for user, so that callers can leave them a message when they are away from their desks. But on the other hand, you may require a voicemail which can answer and route your calls using menu option, along with intelligent queuing function. So let's take a look at the voicemail option available with Avaya IP Office. Avaya IP Office Embedded Voicemail comes for free on the system SD card in the Essentials edition of the Avaya IP Office 500 version 2, or you can select to go for the Voicemail Pro. For IP Office version 2 hardware platform, Voicemail Pro requires a separate server and also requires the IP Office Preferred Edition license. For IP Office Server Edition, the Voicemail Pro can be installed on the same server or on a separate application server. If you buy a new Preferred Edition IP 500 version 2 or upgrade to Preferred Edition, you get the Voicemail Pro license with 4 ports. Any additional port required will need additional licensing. Please make sure you have enough voicemail port to handle the internal and external calls for which you require the use of a Voicemail Pro. Options like auto attendance, call recording, and call queuing can use up your ports more than you might expect. The maximum number of simultaneous calls that the embedded voicemail can handle on the IP Office 500 version 2 is 6. You get 2 voicemail ports with the Essential Edition. Additional channels will require licenses. Previous systems handled only 4 calls. Voicemail Pro can handle up to 40 simultaneous calls with the IP Office 500 version 2. You get 4 ports with the Preferred Edition, and you may expand it with licenses of various sizes. The IP Office Server Edition can grow a lot larger. The Select mode will allow up to 500 ports if using Dual Voicemail Pro, as you can have the maximum of 2 voicemails with up to 250 ports supported by each. When you are thinking about how many voice ports are needed, keep in mind that, generally, the more voicemail users and features, such as outcalling, that you have, the more voicemail ports you will need. Voicemail ports are used when someone is leaving a message in a mailbox, when users are checking voicemail, when someone is in the auto attendant, when the voicemail system is outcalling, and when a user is recording a call. In addition, there are peak usage times, such as at the end of a sales meeting when several people want to check their voicemail at the same time. Voicemail account limits. There is no maximum value of mailboxes allowed. The amount of mailboxes for each voicemail is determined by each respective configuration. The recording memory on IPoffice 500 version 2 starts with 15 hours, with the 2 ports in the embedded voicemail. With an additional Port 2 expansion license, you get 4 ports and 20 hours of recording time. If you take it to the maximum of 6 ports, you'll get 25 hours recording time. The Voicemail Pro's recording memory is dependent on the size of the hard drive of the server. Message recording takes up about a megabyte per minute. You may set an alarm in the Voicemail Pro to warn you when the disk drive is getting full. There are 2 different mailbox models that can be used with Voicemail Pro, which are IP Office Mode and Intuity Mode. With Embedded, you get IP Office Mode only. All mailboxes on the system have to use the same mode. You cannot have a mixture. And if you were to swap from one mode to another, you would lose all mailboxes' messages, so it is not a recommended action. The features that are available on mailboxes are as follows, whether you're using IP Office Mode or Intuity Mode. When you create users and hunt groups, mailboxes are automatically created for them. Virtual mailboxes are also supported for users that are off-site or for other purposes. There is support for multiple languages. Each mailbox's language used for prompts depends on the locale choice in the User tab. Each mailbox has personalized greetings, but the number of greetings is dependent on the mode you use. IP Office Mode has 3 greetings, whereas Intuity Mode has up to 9. The mailbox may simply be a looped recording, for example, giving directions and storing hours. For both modes, Hunt Group mailboxes have an announcement for when a caller enters a queue, and also an update announcement while waiting in the queue. Users can be notified by a system-generated phone call or email when they get a voicemail. The voicemail recording can be attached. The users may also remotely access their voicemail. While listening to messages, you can skip, rewind, fast forward, delete, get help, and call back anyone, internal or external, who has left a message by pressing 1 or 2 buttons. This depends on the caller ID. An auto attendant lets a caller use the phone keypad, make a selection from up to a dozen possible choices. A multi-level auto attendant can have sub-auto attendants as choices in the menu, widely expanding the possibilities. Avaya also provides separate breakouts to exit an auto attendant or other menu. Breakouts are typically used by an outside caller who may, for example, press 0 to reach a receptionist. There are more features, but these are the common ones used. For more information, please refer to the Avaya knowledge base. The visual voice menu is displayed on phones as shown here. Both voicemail types support visual voice. Users can access their personal and Hunt Group mailboxes by launching visual voice with the message button or other program button on their telephone. The context-sensitive keys guide users through voicemail menus. This enables faster selection of important communications, plus faster and simpler administration of greetings and settings. Please note, button option can be different depending on the software versions and handset type. You may need to press a More button to display all features. Here are the other frequently used Voicemail Pro features that are not in the embedded voicemail, but there are many more than this. Centralized voicemail services for several sites. Fallback IP office control in case the main IP office is down. Backup voicemail server operations to save configurations and messages. Distributed voicemail servers in a small community network, SCN. Database connectivity and interaction DO, IVR. Interactive voice response. Condition checking in a call flow. Support for Visual Basic scripts. Queue position announcement for people waiting for a Hunt Group member to answer. Plus an estimated time to answer announcement. Automatic message deletion after set time. Integration with Avaya 1X portal. Call recording. Campaign Manager, which can handle a question and answer feature with customers, including numerical input collection. Certain Voicemail Pro options will only be supported when you use the Intuity mode mailboxes, such as email reading using text-to-speech, integrated messaging, IMS, which connects with Outlook, unified messaging, UMS, which gives a web interface to manage messages, synchronization with email, expanded personal announcements. You will get up to 9 different greeting options, such as greetings for if you are busy on a call or if you are on holiday. Holiday greetings need to be turned on and off manually to cover the period of absence. Assign message priorities. You can mark your message as urgent if required. The default access to voicemail is done using the shortcode *17, which is in the shortcode menu. This shortcode allows users to access their mailboxes directly from their telephone for handling voicemail messages and administration. If users are using IP Office mode, then you will not need a passcode, but with Intuity mode, you will. To initialize a mailbox for the first time, a user dials this shortcode and follows the prompts to record their names and greetings. Once the initialization is done, the user is added to the dial by name directory and other voicemail-related system settings. This is the form used for configuring the many settings for a user. In the Sources Number tab, we see the entry V6505. This is set automatically in the mailbox. It means the user does not have to enter a password to get their own messages if they are using their desk phone. Access to other user mailboxes and Hunt Group mailboxes can be manually entered here if desired. Voicemail help, ringback, unified messaging service, UMS, email reading, and DTMF breakouts are not set in default. If a user is to have voicemail email, the user's email address is entered here in this user form. A fixed direct dial setting for remote access can be activated using an incoming call route. Employees calling in to pick up voice messages can access them and manage their mailboxes via a DID, DDI number that is set up in an incoming call route form. The incoming call's destination needs to be set to go to voicemail, which is an option offered in the drop-down destination field. If the Voicemail Pro is set for IP Office mode, each employee will appear in the destination field. If you are using IP Office mode, then you can make incoming routes that sees employee's phone number and then send the calls directly to the employee's own mailbox. For example, entering V077-103-27696 in the source code field would allow a call coming in from this British phone number to get into the voicemail system as if the caller had entered *17 from his or her desk phone. With Intuity mode, there is an extra password step in this process. It is also possible to have the auto attendant give access to voicemail. This voicemail selection would not normally be mentioned to the public in the outgoing announcement that lists a caller's choices. By placing an entry such as H London Main in the Members Source Numbers tab, this user's message waiting light will be on if the London Main Hunt Group has a voicemail. This user can retrieve the message if he or she has the password set in the London Main Hunt Group configuration. To access a Hunt Group mailbox, you can either go and listen to messages via visual voice, or you create a shortcode for quick access, as shown here. Using this shortcode, you can listen to Hunt Group messages and also record greetings, such as the day and nighttime greetings and queuing announcements. Topics covered in this course include: summarize the differences between Avaya Voicemail Pro and Embedded Voicemail. Use voicemail to set up user and group mailboxes, shortcodes and source numbers, and message waiting indication. Configure users to log into voicemail from their own extensions. After completing this learning object, you will be able to describe the features and capabilities of Avaya 1X portal for IP Office, understand how users access and use the Avaya 1X portal services, list the extra features available with Call Assistant and plugins. After completing this learning object, you will be able to describe the features and capabilities of Avaya 1X portal for IP Office, understand how users access and use the Avaya 1X portal services, list the extra features available with Call Assistant and plugins. Avaya 1X portal is a server application that allows IP Office users to control their phone and various telephony settings through a web browser. A single Avaya 1X portal server can support multiple IP offices when they are connected in a single IP Office Small Community Network, SCN. Avaya 1X portal installs as a service with an integral web server. The Avaya 1X portal server gives users PC control over their communications on the IP Office system. All they need is a browser and a phone. The Avaya 1X portal handles all of the user's communications using any IP Office extension, analog, digital, or any IP telephones, wired or wireless. Dialing, hanging up, and other features are handled in the browser, although the phone can be used for these, but they're normally used just for audio. Users communicate to the Avaya 1X portal, and the portal communicates with IP Office and with Voicemail Pro. The result is a communications platform that has the feature set that you find on smart cell phones, the features in the IP Office, the features of Voicemail Pro, as well as secure integration with Outlook and other applications, complete visibility and control of voice, video, voicemail, email with voicemail, and IM chat on one screen, with a real monitor, keyboard, and mouse. The Avaya 1X mobile application provides these features to cell phones and tablets. This Avaya 1X portal logical diagram shows the IP Office with a Avaya 1X portal server connected into the customer's LAN, which provides the Avaya 1X portal application to the user's desktop via their web browser. It also shows that the Avaya 1X portal server is also providing the Avaya 1X portal services to all other IP Office systems and users over the SCN. All users that require Avaya 1X portal will require an Office Worker, Teleworker, Mobile Worker, or Power User Profile license to do so. In a web browser, users and administrators may access the Avaya 1X portal at https://server name: server port /1xportal.html. Server name is the name or the IP address of the Avaya 1X portal server. Server port is the port number used for access. 9443 is used for a Windows server-based Avaya 1X portal server. 8443 is for a Linux-based server. Users should enter the name and password that are configured in the User tab in Manager. Here you can see the main screen facing the Avaya 1X portal user. Avaya 1X portal for IP Office provides 4 main gadgets for handling communication. Calls gadget provides PC telephony, such as hold and transfer, along with conferencing controls, allowing you to manage your conference calls. Call log gadget provides call history for incoming, outgoing, and missed calls. Message gadget provides access and control of the user's voicemail box. And the directory gadget, which has system, external, and personal directories plus IM features. There are several other gadgets that can be purchased and several that are free, such as World Clock gadget with time zones, calculator, news feeds, and more. A user can have up to 5 different screens and configurations saved as user profiles, such as home, travel, and office. Each profile has the various features arranged to suit the locale and activities used. Avaya 1X portal for IP Office allows you to have instant message chat sessions with other users. You can recognize them by the green icon in the directory. You can use an instant message session even when on a call to the same user that you are messaging. You can click on the contact's chat icon to start a chat session. The IM pop-up window appears on the contact's screen and yours. You can have chat sessions with many Avaya 1X portal users at the same time. If you do not want others to chat, you can set your present status to offline. Sometimes an instant message session is insufficient to get an idea across to the other person, or a phone call is a quicker way to achieve the desired result. You can call the person in an IM conversation window using the @call command. You can search instant message conversations that you have had with other contacts. Click on the Search All tab at the top of the IM window. The system displays the list of all conversations based on your search. If no results are found, click on Back to change your search criteria. Once you have found the conversation you wish to view, click on the conversation to open it. The system opens the conversation. The Avaya 1X portal for IP Office supports a Call Assistant plugin, which is a desktop application that runs in the Windows taskbar. You can use the 1X Call Assistant application to perform a range of call control functions without logging into the 1X portal for IP Office using your browser. The system displays the 1X Call Assistant icons in the Windows system tray, normally at the lower right corner of the screen. You can right-click the icon to view the available commands and any other additional information. When you hover the mouse over the 1X Call Assistant icon, the system displays the status and the number of voicemail messages that you have received. Call Assistant can be used to receive calls, drop calls, launch the Avaya 1X portal for IP Office browser, and to configure screen options. Hover the cursor over the Call Assistant icon in the taskbar, and it will display the number of missed calls and voice messages. While displaying an incoming call using the drop button, will send an unanswered call directly to voicemail. You can use the Avaya IP Office plugin with Microsoft Outlook. When you have a meeting scheduled in your Outlook calendar, and if you need to call in, you can directly log in to 1X portal for IP Office and make a call, answer a call, or transfer a call. You don't have to open 1X portal for IP Office using a browser and then make a call. This window appears in Outlook. It can be closed, yet you're not logged out of Outlook. The telephony, directory, IM, and other functions are available through the plugin. Microsoft Outlook is an application that many workers launch in the morning and keep running all day. The IP Office plugin for Microsoft Outlook brings a subset of the Avaya 1X portal user capability to Outlook. The plugin allows the user to communicate with the contacts without leaving the Outlook window and without needing to bring up other separate client application. This improves user productivity. Avaya IP Office plugin for Microsoft Outlook provides the following features. It supports Windows 8 and above, and it supports Microsoft Outlook version 2013 and 2010. There is virtualization support for Citrix environment. It has federated presence and instant messaging, enhanced directory operations, contact cards, an avatar, status message support, and the ability to view the communication history with the selected contact, as well as the whole communication history for the logged-in user. Other features include click to dial from Outlook email text, Avaya 1X user profile management, new dialing rules for outgoing calls, and secure communication mode over a secure port. The Avaya 1X portal for IP Office Salesforce plugin pops the Salesforce customer screen when calls come in. The user needs to have a Salesforce.com account. Caller ID has to match a Salesforce customer record. A new record may be made at this point if desired. Salesforce has the call controls to dial outgoing calls as well as answering incoming calls. After completing this learning object, you will be able to describe the features and capabilities of Avaya 1X portal for IP Office. Understand how users access and use the Avaya 1X portal services. List the extra features available with Call Assistant and plugins. Thank you for participating in the course. We hope you found it helpful and informative. For further information on Avaya's products and training, please visit avaya.com. If you wish to visit the Avaya Knowledge Base, please click the link present on screen or visit www.avaya.com/support.